Good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Notice has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building and sending a copy to the Montclair Times, Star Ledger, and Herald News. This is a public hearing in which any members of the public are welcome to attend. The meeting agenda is available on the Montclair website, as is a link to the Township's YouTube channel where the hearing can be viewed live or after the fact. The hearing is also being televised on Channel 34. I'll now call the roll. Chair Harrison? Here. Vice Chair McCullough is not present. Mr. Caulfield is not present. Mr. Church?
Here.
Ms. Harris is not present. Mr. Moore is not present. Mr. Simon is not present. Mr. Vieira?
Here.
Ms. Jamina is not present. Mr. Griffith?
Here.
Mr. Cruz?
Here.
And we have Joe Turriello for Mike Sullivan today.
Present.
Yes. Okay.
I'm just lost. Okay, we have the minutes of the August 21st meeting. Does anyone have any changes? I do not. If not, someone want to move the...
I'll move the minutes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Okay. The next resolution I can't participate in.
Oh, brother.
So someone else needs to either make changes or move approval of the resolution.
Which one's that?
It's the Montclair Co-op.
Co-op?
Yeah.
I had no changes.
I don't have any change. You want to move it?
I'll move the resolution with no changes.
Second.
I guess I can say all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed and abstentions, I abstain. Okay, we have the resolution for the property on Mountainside Park Terrace. I have a couple changes to that. On the first paragraph on page 2, on the fourth line, after the sentence that starts, additionally an infinity swimming pool will be installed, put the word partially in the front yard. And then in the last line of that sentence at the beginning, the changes resulted in a 40-foot square foot reduction. Because it wasn't just the pool change that did that, because the pool got bigger. Any other changes to that resolution?
I have none.
Someone want to move the resolution with those changes?
I'll move the resolution with the changes and
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? And we have the resolution for the Art of Rain on Church Street. I don't have any changes. Does anyone else have any changes? If not, someone want to move the resolution?
I'll move the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? First application is that of Ralph Lucci and Carla Macaluso for property at 17 Laurel Place. This is an application for variances to construct a complete second floor plus attic addition to the dwelling. The property is located in the R11 Family Zone District, the corner of Laurel Place and Upper Mountain Avenue, and is designated on the township tax maps on Lot 24 and Block 802. Variances are requested from Montclair Code Section 347-45B2 to permit a setback of less than 36 feet from Laurel Place and a setback of less than 32 feet from Upper Mountain Avenue, and a rear yard setback of, and from Montclair Code Section 347-45D to permit a rear yard setback of less than 28 feet. Are taxes in order, and is the notice in order, or taxes paid?
Yes.
Okay. Who do we have?
Hello, can you hear me? Excellent.
Okay, whoever's going to be testifying needs to be sworn in. It's your,
Yeah. So whoever, we're gonna have one witness testify?
He's the owner. I'm
Okay,
the
can you raise your right hand?
Yes,
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're gonna give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, it is.
And can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
My name is Ralph, R-A-L-P-H. Last name is Lucci, L-U-C-C-I.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening. Thank you, everyone on the board and Sanam for listening to our case this evening. We are here before you to look for approval for renovations on our home, 17 Laurel Place. I'm here with my wife, Carla Macaluso, and our architect, Lawrence Quirk, who has worked in Montclair before. I won't take up too much of your time. This is a little bit of backstory I just wanted to give. We've lived in Montclair for 17 years. I lived 3 years prior in an apartment complex, and we bought the home in 2007 near the train station because I commute into New York City. And we love the location. We love Presby Iris Gardens and Mills and just everything about where we are. And so does our dog. So it's just the home has been a little bit tight for us. It's only 2 bedrooms, and so we don't have a lot of space. And so we've looked several times at finding other homes, but we just love our location. And so it has been a while, but it's been a lot of planning and saving and planning and saving to build the second story onto the home, which we humbly submit for your review. Again, we love the area, we love our neighbors. After we sent out the certified mail, at least half a dozen approached me and said, finally. Our home is the only ranch on the block, and so everyone is excited for us to fit in, and they're excited for us. So here we are.
any questions from members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Larry Quirk. I'm the architect for the project. If I can first go over to the screen and describe it from there, so you can
Just
see what's
take
going
a
on
microphone
the site.
with you.
Okay.
Do we swear him in
Yes. Well,
He's got to have one right.
too? Sorry, sir, if you're gonna test, can I swear you in too?
I'm sorry?
You have to be
Can I swear
sworn
you in
in.
too, please? Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're gonna give to this board this evening is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. Yeah, thank you. So this house, this ranch is at the corner of Mountain Avenue and Laurel Place. It is the only one-story home on the block. It's probably the only one-story home on North Mountain too. Here's Mountain Avenue, here's Laurel Place. That very bold line, this is the existing one-story, and this is the existing two-car garage. We are building directly above the home and above the garage. We're not encroaching any closer to Laurel or to Upper Mountain. The only area that we are encroaching toward Laurel is to create a portico in the front, which we're extending 5 feet from the front facade of the house. On the side of Upper Mountain Avenue, we've actually eliminated one of the existing variances. We're removing this screen porch, so now the front yard setback is 26.5, where 25 is required. On this particular piece of property, because it's a corner, and this is the narrow side, this becomes the rear yard. You would think that this was the rear yard, but this is, and that's the second variance, where 25 is required. 29 feet is required, and an existing 5.90. But we're not encroaching any closer to the property line on that side. On the site, we're also going to widen the driveway. It's very narrow right now. We're going to add a patio in the rear, and we're removing a condenser unit here and placing 2 new condenser units there. On the first floor, could you go to the next sheet?
Sorry, this is the slow motion version.
Okay. Keep going. That's it. That was it. No. Scroll up. Yeah. Keep going. Right there.
Perfect.
Almost perfect. It's good enough. Here's the existing attached two-car garage. This is going to be the new front door entrance. The portico that I just mentioned is right here. They're going to walk into a new foyer with a new stair. Obviously, there's no stair right now that leads to a second floor. There is no second floor. There's a new stair that goes up to the second floor. To the right side is we're enlarging the existing living room, but keeping within the same footprint. There's a rear bedroom that's staying. We're adding a new powder room, new kitchen, new mudroom. And then in the back, of course, is these doors, these patio doors, lead to a new patio in the rear. Just go to the second floor. Good, okay, so right here. So again, this is the new second floor. There's 4 bedrooms, one of which is a master suite. There's a common bathroom. There is an extension out the rear at the master bedroom. It's only a 1-foot cantilever. It's a total of 15 square feet. There is a bay window here. It's also on the first floor. A bay window here. This one faces Upper Mountain. This faces Laurel Place. And then, of course, here's the master bathroom and a walk-in closet. Then there's a stair leading from the second floor up to a new attic. The new attic consists of a new playroom, utilities, and storage. And now, this is the new front facade. And I know you must have the photographs from the planner that shows the existing front of the house, existing side and rear. So I believe you can see the big difference between this and that. That's really a disaster, we'll call it, in terms of architectural character. I think I've improved it quite a bit. Again, everything stays within the existing footprint, except that cantilever in the rear, and also those bay windows and the front portico. I think it works very well with the character of both Laurel Place and especially of Upper Mountain. And what's another positive aspect of this application, there's no building coverage variance, there's no impervious coverage variance, there's no height variance, just those 2 variances, and they're pretty much existing non-conforming. Okay.
Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
You mentioned before, earlier, that on the side of the house, there's room for what?
I'm sorry?
You said on the left side of the house, as you're looking at it.
The left side of the house is the 2-car garage.
Okay, there's nothing else except a 2-car garage?
Right now, currently, and we're building directly above that.
You're gonna put something on top of that?
Yes, that's the master closet and the master bathroom.
Okay. That's it.
Mr. Vieira, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, following up on that question, so you said that the 2-car garage is actually the rear of the property. It's considered the rear because it has
Yes.
2 frontage.
Yes.
Correct.
And that's, again, I believe the board understands that when you apply for a variance, there has to be a hardship. And most corner properties come with a hardship because there's 2 front yards,
Yeah.
whereas interior lots, they just have 1 front yard. And the way this house is positioned, that strikes that rear yard variance.
Yeah, and you're basically taking the existing footprint of the 2-car garage and then building 2 floors?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
The other question I had was the proposed attic.
Yes.
Is that going to be habitable or just storage?
Yes, it will be habitable, yes.
Yes, okay.
Just for a playroom, mostly for storage
Yeah,
and utilities.
utilities, yeah.
Because we do HVAC units, 1 in the attic and 1 in the basement. I never spoke about the basement. The basement's just gonna be rec room, laundry room, storage, and utilities.
All right, thank you.
And that's the existing basement. Again, the basement's not expanding. The first floor is not expanding, other than those bay windows. And as I mentioned, the second floor, it's pretty much identical to the footprint of the first floor.
Mr. Griffith, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I thought it was a very reasonable proposal.
Mr. Cruz, do you have any questions?
Nope, no questions.
Okay. I just want to go over the setbacks a little. The, what will be the, okay, so the corner of the house will now, on Upper Mountain, you're going from 20.7 feet to 26.5 feet, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and the.
And that's a real eyesore, that screen porch, but yes, that we're eliminating.
And so you're decreasing the setback there, that's.
Correct.
There.
And it's
your
pretty much at that 26.5. If you were to go on Google Earth, it's pretty much in line with the setback of the house adjacent to it on Upper Mountain Avenue. So it's pretty much in line.
And then the only change in the front, you're decreasing it by 5 feet, but as only for the portico.
Correct, yes.
The rest of the addition is keeping the
Yes.
24.9 feet of the existing house, and further when it's being built over the back, built over the
Absolutely,
garage.
yeah. Yes.
Okay. Are there any members of the public here who either have questions, testimony, statements, anything you want to say concerning the application? Okay. Anything further any of you want to say before we discuss and vote on the application?
I would just say it's a major improvement to Laurel Place, Upper Mountain Road, and that whole area.
Okay, we'll start discussion, Mr. Church.
I think the application is a good one. I think it's a big improvement to the property that's there now. I can understand the need, if you only have 2 bedrooms on the first floor, to get a second floor in there. And you're really not stepping out to make the building bigger than it is. You're staying within the footprint of the building and just going up, as far as I
Yes.
can reckon. And the portico in the front eliminates that screen porch altogether.
Yeah, sort of, yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm in favor of the application as being presented.
Mr. Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm also in favor of the application. I think this is a good improvement. Removing the screen porch is very thoughtful to remove that variance, the existing non-conformance, so I'm in favor.
Thank you.
Mr. Griffith.
I'm in favor of the application.
I'm in favor of the application.
Thanks.
I'm also in favor of the application. I think the bulk of the addition is following the existing setbacks of the house. They're reducing the variance that exists by eliminating the porch on Upper Mountain, and it's only a slight increase to construct a portico, which we've allowed for other applications, given the position of the house on the lot and the fact it's a corner lot. There's really no way they can do a conforming addition that would have any meaning. The current house does not fit into the neighborhood, and all the other houses on the block are 2 or 2.5 stories, and that's what they're creating. I think this will be an enhancement and certainly will not result in a substantial detriment to the public good or a substantial impairment to the zone plan. Would someone like to move approval or any other motion you want to make? But
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the approval of the application as presented.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
The next application is the continuation of the public hearing for Montclair Sky BNC LLC for the property at 400 Orange Road. Is the applicant here and ready to go?
You're gonna need 5 because of the D1 variance. So
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Gregory Sarah, Banner Road, McDonald Sarah, on behalf of the applicant, Montclair Sky. As the chair has just said, this is a continuation of our application, 400 Orange Road. We are seeking preliminary final site plan and approval, variance approval to construct 7 units on the site. Mr. Chairman, tonight what I propose to do is present Klein, our traffic engineer, and Matthew Flynn, our planner, and then wrap up at the next meeting with our civil engineer. We'll try to get through as much as we can tonight. It was clear that we weren't going to finish, so even with the, we've not asked for a vote tonight, given that there's 5 members, but we're ready to proceed with Mr. Klein.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give in this proceeding before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Klein, state your full name for the record, please.
Lee, middle initial D as in Daniel, Klein, K-L-E-I-N.
And the name of your...
Could you just
company.
make sure, just to press it once?
Okay.
Oh,
Thank
now it's
you.
brighter green.
Yeah.
And the name of your...
The principal of Klein Traffic Consulting, 156 Walker Road, West Orange, New Jersey.
Okay, and can you give the board the benefit of your professional education, your professional experience?
Certainly, a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers University. I'm also a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. My license is current and in good standing. I'm also a nationally certified professional traffic operations engineer, and that certification is also in good standing.
And you've appeared and testified in front of many boards within the state of New Jersey?
Well over 100 boards throughout New Jersey, Jersey City, Newark, Verona. I'm the board traffic engineer in Livingston.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that you accept Mr. Klein as an expert in traffic and traffic engineering.
We accept him.
Thank you.
Mr. Klein, you've done a traffic study with regard to the proposed project at 400 Orange Road, correct?
That's correct.
And you did submit your, your study methodology and the results of your study to
That's
the
correct.
board? Okay. And what is the date of that study?
The date of the study is December 4th, 2023. It's entitled Traffic Engineering Evaluation, 400 Orange Road, Montclair Township.
And could you go over the study with the board, please?
Certainly. Back when that report was current, we had 8 dwelling units. Now we're at 7 dwelling units. So I believe we submitted an exhibit previously of my trip generation table that was updated for 7 dwelling units. We used land use code from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, land use code 220, multifamily housing low rise, and we used the average rate for a general urban suburban area. For 7 units, we're looking at approximately 3 trips during the AM peak hour, 1 hour between 7 and 9 a.m., 1 trip in, 2 trips out. And in the evening peak hour, also 3 trips during that 1 peak hour between 4 and 6 p.m., 2 trips in, 1 trip out. And then really, when it generates less than 100 peak hour trips, the DOT, also the Institute of Transportation Engineers says that that's not a significant increase in traffic. So with 3 trips in and out during a peak hour, we didn't do any kind of an actual analysis of the driveway or the intersection of anything nearby because of the low traffic volumes. We did look at the parking. And I believe we meet the parking requirements. Again, my report is the outdated version, but I believe we heard from the architect that we have enough parking on site to meet the requirements. And again, these are requirements from the residential site improvement standards, and those are now maximums. We exceed that maximum. So I concluded from that report that 7 units of low-rise multifamily housing would have no significant impact on traffic on the surrounding streets, Pleasant Way, Ward Place, or Orange Road, based on the low number of trips that would be generated during the AM and PM peak hour.
Did you also look at the circulation within the proposed development?
Yes, and from the date of my report, I've been on this project for close to a year now, and I had input with the architect and the engineer when we laid out the site and we laid out where the driveway was and how we were going to circulate, getting cars in and out of their parking spaces in their garages and the common spots that are separate. And I worked with them, and we came up with a plan that meets the intent of the residential site improvement standards. It provides enough parking for all the units, whether it's in a garage or a driveway or a surface spot, and then it provides that half a space per unit. In this case, it's 4 visitor parking spaces. And again, that's an RSIS requirement.
Okay, and just to go back, you had said that you did not do counts, but your study and the results of that study were consistent with the requirements of the ITE.
That's correct, yeah. As I said before, when we have less than 100 peak hour trips, the DOT considers that less than 100 is not a significant increase in traffic, and the Institute of Transportation Engineers guidelines say that when it's less than 100 peak hour trips, we don't need to do an analysis of anything. And we're at 3 trips, so that's much, much lower than 100.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
No questions.
Mr. Vieira?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do have a few questions. The previous proposal had the entrances on both sides, and now the current proposal, it's only on one of the streets.
Pleasant.
Pleasant, correct. And how does that affect the traffic, basically? Because now, yeah.
I believe the iteration before this one, I thought it was an entrance on one side and exit on the other.
Yeah.
And this one, we're going to have the entrance and exit on Pleasant. That's opposite the cemetery. Traffic will come out and turn out and probably go right out to Orange because that's really kind of a dead end, Pleasant and Ward. So the traffic will come out, make a left, and then come out to Orange and either make a left or a right. So concentrating 3 trips coming out in a peak hour, I'm not concerned with that at all.
Okay. And so can you explain again, how does the 3 trips come out? How does that calculation?
The Institute of Transportation Engineers, and we're in the 11th edition of the trip generation. That's a compilation of data collected by other traffic engineers at various locations. And I can say that I've verified a couple of them myself. I've done a project in Livingston on Northfield Road where I did counts, compared them to what the ITE generated was going to be, went back after it was built and counted it. They were within 5 or 10%. I also did another one, I think it was in Saddle River, same type of thing. I did a count, figured out how many units were there, did the math and said, oh yeah, we're within 5 or 10%. So even if I'm off by 50% or 100%, 3 trips or 6 trips coming out in a peak hour, that's a trip every 10 minutes. If I was off by 100%. Right now I'm saying it's a trip every 20 minutes in or out.
Okay, thanks. The other comment I think I read in the engineer's report regarding to traffic was that I had the impression that there might not be enough parking for visitors within the property. So did you look at that and consider, the visitors parking on the street and where will there?
No, we've accounted for the visitor parking on site. We have the the residential site improvement standards guidance is a half a space per unit. So 7 times a half is 3.5. We round it up to 4. So we have 4 spaces that are not assigned to a resident, and then we have the residents each get their 2 spaces.
Okay, so there is or there is not?
There is.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's 4
On site.
spaces that are unassigned for the
Unassigned
residents that
for
would be for
everyone.
visitors. Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
And if
Mr.
there's
Klein-
more?
On site,
Mr. Klein, that's not an arbitrary number, correct?
It's a number from the RSIS. They give us that guidance. They say that they want a half a space. So, again, 4 of the units could have a visitor. One unit could have 2 visitors. But it works out to be on average about a half a space.
Okay. I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask this question, but there was a letter from the fire department about the turning radius and comments about that. Did you look at that?
I haven't seen that letter from the fire department. I don't
just-
recall. Yeah, I don't recall seeing
the
that
fi-
letter,
the
but
fire-
was that based on the current
The
layout?
Correct.
It was,
Yeah.
okay. I haven't, yeah.
Chairman, I haven't seen a copy of that letter.
Oh. Okay, we can review that.
Well, I mean, I assume Mr. Klein is the appropriate person to
Yeah.
respond.
There's a letter that says I guess the new loop basically should be able to provide enough space for the turning radius of the biggest truck in town. So.
And I'm sorry, but when you said should be, they're saying it should be, they're saying it's sufficient, or they want
No, I think that the
proof
comment.
it is sufficient?
Yeah,
Right.
correct, yeah.
Well, the residential site improvement standards also has guidance for cul-de-sacs and dead ends.
Yeah.
If it's greater than 300 feet long, then we need a cul-de-sac to be able to turn around. If it's less than that, they can pull in and then they can back out. And that's how that works on the shorter ones.
Right.
So again, I haven't read the comments. I'm not sure exactly how they're asking.
Mr. Vieira, I thought, and I'm not testifying, of course, I thought that there was some correspondence from the fire department or some speculation, if it's speculation, obviously, it's only worth speculation, that any fire would be fought from the street and not from the interior?
I don't
Does
think
anybody
so.
else recall that that was a discussion?
I don't think so. I think I saw a comment that the fire truck should be able to make that loop.
Okay, all right. But again, we have not, we have a,
Okay, we'll make sure that that's shared.
okay, thank you.
Or it
Thank you.
was shared, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Church?
That brings to mind for me the collection of garbage. The garbage trucks are pretty big. And do they have the ability to go in to these units and pick up the garbage and get out, or do they have to go in and then back out?
Mr. Church, there was testimony last month, I don't believe you were here, that talked about the garbage collection would be consistent with a single-family homeowner's garbage collection.
Right.
That the cans would be
pull
brought
out.
out to the street, back into
Okay,
the
now,
garage.
going out to the street means that they would either be on Orange Road or one of this.
Or Pleasant or
Or
Ward.
Pleasant, yeah, okay.
Correct, right.
All right. So there'd be no need for anything bigger than a fire, same size as a fire truck to go in there.
We don't contemplate a.
You don't
Right.
contemplate that.
Disposal.
Correct.
Okay, the other comment I had was, I think there was a comment in the engineer's report that with the new proposal with the, I guess, one-way loop, so the entrance is a two-way entrance, the loop is a one-way loop, correct? And,
I believe so.
yeah,
Because there's a little island in the middle.
yeah,
Yeah.
so going around the loop, how do you prevent people from coming into the two-way street directly into the,
I mean, there'll be, site distance will be there. So when somebody comes in, and again, 3 trips, two in, 1 out, 1 in, 2 out, we're not talking about a lot of traffic at
Yeah.
the same time. If this was 80 units, maybe I'd be concerned with, but again, it would be a bigger layout. So for 7 units, a vehicle coming in, a vehicle coming out, if they went the quote-unquote wrong way on that loop, I don't think that would be a problem. It may be better to go the right way to make the loop, to be able to make the turn into their garage, so that people will figure out the best way in.
sure, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Griffith?
So I trust your experience and your expertise on the numbers, just, and I regret that every morning I get up and go to work, and every morning my wife gets up and goes and takes my son out. So that's 2 trips already, and we only live in one house. So I think there's more there, but I appreciate your comment that even if everybody got in their car and went out to work during rush hour, it's not going to have an impact on the traffic in a significant way.
Correct.
So, understood. But it is sort of baffling that only 2 cars would leave there, just saying.
In the 1 hour, somebody may leave before 7 o'clock, somebody may, it's spread out over more than 1 hour.
I understand. You can understand why some people may shake their heads, though.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough?
Sure.
I looked at the planning of the driveway, and as the driveway leaves the street and comes to the back where there's a turn to the right, and then there's a turnaround. So the turn to the right, next the driveway width down. So there's no longer 2 lanes, it's neck down. And I don't understand why it's neck down. One comment.
I think to fit that landscaped island in there,
Sorry?
to fit the landscaped island.
That's in the middle. You're not
Yeah.
understanding my point.
Yeah, I'm not,
If I turn off the street and I drive up the driveway, it then turns to the side. The property line comes and jogs, right? When it turns to the side, the driveway's width is reduced significantly. It necks down there.
Yes.
And I don't understand why it necks down.
That's
one way.
Well, the engineer can testify
Yeah.
to that, but it has to do with impervious coverage and reducing the amount of pavement. And because it would only need, because the intention is that it would be one way.
If you're interested in that, then there's a triangle on the side. The property line comes and turns at 90 degrees. Nobody's driving straight up there. That triangle, you have paved. You should make that landscape.
I could talk to the engineer about, we don't have engineering tonight, so we would.
I understand.
No, we would have the opportunity to make that, to honor that suggestion.
I make this, you did the traffic.
Okay.
That's the driveway, so
Okay.
I'm making the point.
Great.
I think that it's good for as far as the impervious paving, though, I don't really buy that. I mean, you're not complying with the impervious pavement requirements anyway. So I don't understand why you neck the driveway down.
Okay, we'll look at that design.
If you look at the plan there, you could change the curve of the paving on the inside and accommodate the width.
Okay.
I think that the people that own the house would be happier.
Okay.
As far as my other comment is, you said that you did the traffic study on access to the parking garages, the garages in the houses, in the townhouses?
the access to it, meaning,
So, well, cut to the chase. Townhouse 5
right,
in the corner has 15 feet between the face of the garage door and the adjacent building. I do not understand how you pull 2 cars into that garage. I don't think there's enough space unless you're driving, I don't know, Minis and Fiat 500s.
That,
we'll leave,
Again, Mr. Griffith, that would be the engineer to testify as to the distance. Mr.
It's-
Klein is, unfortunately, is traffic numbers with traffic.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Right, but,
the site layout is a different person.
Right.
Yeah.
You understand why
Yeah,
I asked the
absolutely.
question,
Yes.
sir, right? Okay.
yeah,
Those are my questions. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Cruz?
I just had one question. In terms of the site distance when you're leaving the driveway, in terms of if there's any obstructions, like with the trees, is that a question that you would answer, or would that be something the engineer answers?
That would also be the engineer, but I can tell him what the numbers would be. It's 240 feet for a 25-mile-an-hour road, so coming out of our driveway, you got to be able to see, I guess, to the west on Pleasant, at least 240 feet.
And that's something that your board engineer, if it were an issue, would point out with our engineer as well. So we'll double check his report, which we
Okay.
just received, today being Wednesday, we received his report, I think, on Friday. So we'll be able to take a look at that to make sure it's not the case.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. I want to follow up on the questions Mr. Griffith was asking in terms of, so, Mr. Klein, you did not look at all about the ability to access the various parking spaces from the driveway?
Correct.
Okay. And I take it, Mr. Macero, that your engineer will be able to address the questions I have concerning that?
That would be the intention, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And then to follow up the other question Mr. Griffith asked, as when you enter the driveway, it's 19 feet wide. Then there's the point it narrows down to 17 feet before you get to the one-way, and I think that's where what Mr. Griffith was trying to address as to why, because that's, at that point, it's still two-way.
Right.
And if that is necessary, and if, I assume that's also a question for the engineer. The other question, the plans don't clearly show the driveway being one way once you get into the property going around the island. It would appear it's intended to be, circulation would be counterclockwise, is that correct?
I believe so.
Yes.
Counterclockwise.
I guess, from some of the spaces, the visitor spaces, the obvious way to access those and the easiest way to access those is to go straight in, not make the right, go around the island and then make what would be a sharper turn into them versus pulling straight in. Do you envision that in reality is what people is going to do? Is there going to be signage indicating one way? I'm trying to, I think the reality is people are going to drive in, see spaces, if they're visitors, see spaces in front of them and pull straight into them.
Mr. Chairman, based on Mr. Griffith's question and your follow-up question, it's clear that I should speak to our engineer to provide for signage, either traditional signs or, in addition, painting on the asphalt, arrows, directional arrows, in that regard.
And probably painting the asphalt will be actually more visible because there's
Right.
clear places to put signage that won't end up confusing people.
Right, so we will, we'll add, I'll suggest our engineer, we add that to the plan so that the one-way is clearly depicted.
Okay, and then my last question is, did you look at all at the sight distances on Orange Road for, particularly for cars making the left-hand turn onto Orange? I mean, Pleasant Way is not a well-traveled street, and there aren't the issues, but Orange Road is a heavily traveled road as to whether cars coming out, going and wanting to drive into Montclair, whether there's good sight visibility for them to see down the road and safely make the left.
Yeah, because we're on the outside of the curve, on our side of Pleasant. So when you come to Pleasant, the curve is in your favor. The other side of Pleasant Way, it's a little more difficult to see to the left if you're coming, I guess, westbound on Pleasant Way. Eastbound on Pleasant Way, the sight distance is fairly
Yeah,
good,
but
but we're not changing that.
Okay, but I'm talking about cars coming down Pleasant Way and wanting to get on Orange Road.
Right.
And, I'm not going to disagree that you're not adding a lot of traffic, but, you're adding more traffic coming out Pleasant Way onto Orange Road than exists now. And if you looked at what the sight distances are when you come out and particularly making a left-hand turn, how well can you see cars coming northbound on Orange Road?
Like you said, we're only adding, a handful of vehicle trips during any one of the peak hours. And if it's a problem today, then that's something that should be remedied today, regardless of what goes on this site. If there's an issue with sight distance to make a left out of Pleasant Way.
Okay, so you did not look at that as the
Correct,
answer to my
correct.
question?
Yes, I
Okay.
said that at the beginning, yes.
Okay, so we're now opening it up to questions from the public. And let me just go through, since we have a lot new audience members, because we're out of the summer doldrums. And this is only a time to ask questions related to traffic on what this witness testified. When the other witnesses testify, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of them. Then when the applicant finishes their testimony, you will have full opportunity to give whatever testimony, comments, present any exhibits, do whatever you want, and Mr. Massero will have an opportunity to question you in the same way you have an opportunity to question his witnesses. So are there any members of the public who have questions for Mr. Klein?
Mr. Chairman, just some housekeeping. I believe that there is counsel present on behalf of someone other than the applicant. I would just want to make sure that anyone testifying is not anyone asking questions is not represented by counsel?
Okay. But by law, if a person is represented by an attorney, they can only be called as a witness or ask questions through their attorney. You've hired someone to be your spokesman. In the same way, the applicant cannot come up on his own. He can only come up if Mr. Macero calls him.
Thank you. Do I need to introduce myself or just?
You need to
Good
give
evening.
your
Thank
name
you,
and
Commissioners.
address.
My name is Amina Toller. I'm the 4th Ward Counselor here in Montclair, New Jersey. So I have a question regarding the traffic study. You said that you did a traffic study for Pleasant Way and Ward. Did you do any studies to the left or right of Orange Road? And if so, what were the results?
My traffic study is really just a traffic evaluation. So I looked at how many trips would be generated by the now 7 units that are proposed. It generates such a low number of trips, a handful of trips, that we don't analyze the driveway, we don't analyze any external intersections.
Why not? I mean, I'm asking about Orange Road because the cars would have to come off.
Right.
Orange Road is a heavily traveled road.
Right.
Day and night.
Right.
Ubers, residents, deliveries, pedestrians, bikers. So you're saying your traffic study didn't have any studying on Orange Road to the left or the right if coming off of Pleasant or Ward?
That's correct, because the number of trips that are generated by these 7 units that we're proposing is so small that the level of service would not change at the intersection of Pleasant and Orange at any of the peak hours.
Okay. It would change. You're talking about 7 families coming in, perhaps.
The level of service,
Yeah.
which is based on an analysis of the volume, the geometry of the intersection. Pleasant Way is a stop-controlled intersection. If you added 3 or 4 vehicles coming out, even if they were all making a left, the level of service would not change. And that's
I would
my
have to
professional
disagree.
opinion.
Well, I agree, you can have your professional opinion, but as a resident who lives here, that's a lot of traffic, and it does matter. So if you could please ensure that your study includes Orange Road to the left and the right, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
Introduce myself.
Yes.
I'm Kimberly Ward Malloy from Ward Place. I live on the top. My concern is we have a bus that comes down there to pick up kids on the bottom of Pleasant. And they pick up and they drop off. If you have, how many units did you say?
7.
If you have 7 units, let's say they have 2 kids apiece. Think about it. They have buses that come down there. They have kids that's getting off the bus. You got New Jersey Transit. You got garbage trucks. Plus, did you ever think of the emergency vehicles? If somebody gets sick, they got to come in and out? You didn't think about that either, did you? Okay. So,
Okay, let him answer the question.
did you think about that?
When we analyze a development, we look at the peak hours. So we look at 1 hour between 7 and 9, and that's the trip generation number I came up with, and we look at 1 hour between 4 and 6 p.m. When something like this development generates such a low number of peak hour trips, it's not going to have a substantial or any kind of an impact on the operation of the driveway in Pleasant Way or Pleasant Way and Orange Road. When there are emergency vehicles, they have their lights and sirens on. When the garbage truck comes twice a week, the garbage truck comes twice a week.
Let me correct you real quick. They come 3 times a week.
Garbage truck?
Yes. We have recycle and we have garbage we have garbage on Tuesdays, Thursdays is recycle, and Friday is garbage.
But we're not changing that. That's staying the same.
Okay, but
We're adding 3 trips during 1 hour.
you can't do that.
Well, I can't do that. Okay.
You can't, there's no way that you can do that because you can't tell the garbage trucks, oh, you can only come up here twice. You can't do that.
No,
They
that's not
have
what I
to
said.
come.
That's, the garbage trucks are going to continue to collect the way they collect. The school buses will continue to travel the way they travel. The New Jersey Transit buses will continue to travel the way they travel. Emergency vehicles will access the neighborhood the way they have been. All we're doing is adding 7 residential units. They're going to generate at the highest peak hour 3 trips, 1 in, 2 out, 2 in, 1 out, during 1
So-
hour between 7 and 9, and 1 hour between 4 and 6
So what you're
p.m.
saying is you're dictating on what time people gets off and what time
And
people
that's
go
not
to
what I
work?
said.
That's what it sounds,
not
it
what I
seems like
said.
to me. How could you
Okay,
tell?
let him finish answering.
Okay.
When we do traffic studies, we look at trip generation data that's provided to us by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and we're in the 11th edition. It's a compilation of people going out and doing traffic counts at other developments similar to this, whether it's got 50 units, 100 units, 5 units, and then we use that data to predict what kind of traffic is going to be generated by these 7 units. And based on my experience, based on the ITE data, we're looking at less than a handful of trips coming in and out during one of those hours between, it could be 7:30 to 8:30, it could be 7:15 to 8:15. The other hours, the other times, yeah, there may be a vehicle or two coming in or coming out. But that's what's going to happen during the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour.
It's not gonna work. I'm gonna tell you that right now. It's not gonna work. Thank you. It's not gonna work.
Hello, my name is Chantal Bolivar. I live 17 Ward Place. My question, I guess maybe it's more the engineer because it's about the parking and everything. It seems like it's very intricate to find a way to have the cars circulated. Would it be easier if it was 4 units instead of 7 units? Would it be easier to figure it out, parking and traffic? If it was four instead of 7? That's my question.
This is an application for 7 units.
Yeah, but my question.
We didn't study 4 units.
Oh, okay. Because we would like less units. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leonora Rush. I'm at 15 Ward Place. Mr. Klein, my question is, does the data that you rely on, that you make that your report speaks to, does it take into account the changing work style that people have since the pandemic? A lot of people work from home now, and they may have additional trips that the data may not see.
Actually, it'd be the opposite, because during COVID, people stayed home, so there would be less trips coming out to go to an office. They would stay home. So these are probably a little bit conservative, these numbers.
So my point is that I'm relying on my own experience. I work from home. I generally don't have to go into the city, and so my trips are not as that 3 trip. So today, as an example, I've literally had like 4 or 5 round trips.
How many of those trips were between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m.?
I had 2.
Okay.
I had 2. So my point is that the lifestyle of Montclair in general has changed since the pandemic. I understand during the pandemic there were less trips. Now, after the pandemic, the lifestyle has changed and people are moving in and out. They're doing things, they're going to doctor's appointments, they're meeting people for lunch, they're going for a shopping trip. I don't think this data seems to take that into account. I know that's not data that you generated.
Right.
But
this, again, we're looking at the peak hour. So if I were to look at the daily trips, yeah, it would probably be somewhere in the range of 10 trips per unit. So we're talking about 70 over a 24-hour period.
Okay.
And that takes into account lunchtime trips and shopping trips and things outside of the 7 to 9 and 4 to 6 peak hours.
So the point is that the 3 trip estimation may not be completely accurate.
It's accurate for the hours that we're studying, the peak hour in the morning and the peak hour in the PM. Lunchtime,
based upon the data that you're relying on. I understand.
That's how traffic engineers do traffic studies.
I understand, but I also understand that data is not necessarily taking in all the considerations that it needs to.
It is, because we're looking at one peak
Okay,
hour
if members of the
between 7
audience,
a.m.
this
and
is-
9 a.m.
If this is, you all get your chance, and when the applicant's done, you'll get to say why you think any of their witnesses are wrong, but this is, Ms. Rush is asking questions, Mr. Klein is responding. We'll go a lot quicker if we don't have editorial comments as we're going along from the audience.
I think you were still trying to give an
Again,
explanation.
when we do our trip generation calculations, we look at the peak hours. And like I said before, the daily numbers for 7 units might be closer to 70, but that's spread out over 24 hours. And that accounts for shopping trips at 10 a.m. and lunch at 11:30 and coming back from school at 3:30. Those are off-peak hours because the traffic on Orange Road isn't as heavy as it is between 7 and 9 and 4 and 6. But again, I didn't do an analysis because the numbers are so low.
You're saying that the traffic on Orange Road is not as heavy when?
It's heaviest between 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the evening. There may be another hour in there when schools are letting out, but I didn't analyze the intersection. I just calculated the number of trips, and when I get a number that low, I don't go out and do an analysis of anything because it's so low. Even if I was off by, like I said before, 100%, then it would be 6 trips coming in or out during a peak hour.
So I understand that it's what's coming in and out of the 7-unit application.
Correct.
But I think to Ms. Toller's point earlier, because Orange Road is, I mean, it's literally the evacuation route for in case of an emergency. So I think my question would be is that we do need to focus on the amount of traffic that goes down back and forth on Orange Road and how that impacts everyone coming in and out of that unit, not to mention the already pre-existing residents of that immediate area.
Right, and because this development generates such a low number, I don't have to analyze that intersection because it's such a low number. And if we looked at, let's say, the percentage of traffic that this is generating in the peak hour versus what's on Orange Road, we're a very small percentage, if a percent at all. So the traffic volumes can vary by 5 to 10% from day to day during the peak hour.
Understood. And obviously, this is your area of expertise. I understand that. I also just feel that the data that is being relied upon does not look at or doesn't seem to include the life changes that have occurred within the past 4 or 5 years. It doesn't seem to take that into account. That's all I'm saying.
But again, if we're looking at 7 units and if it generates 3 trips according to ITE, and if I'm off by, if it has to be double, then we're talking about 6 trips in 1 hour.
But you see, I'm not necessarily addressing what you're off by. I'm actually questioning the underlying data that you're relying on from ITE.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. If you're saying that maybe I'm off by a certain percentage, like I said, if I doubled the number, it would be 6 trips, a trip every 10 minutes on average.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Klein, does every traffic expert in the state of New Jersey rely on the ITE?
Everyone needs to be quiet. There are several members of the board who need to listen to the tape. They will not be able to understand a word that is said if there's a lot of vocalization from the audience, and that will be prejudicial to everybody.
Mr. Klein, does every traffic expert in the state of New Jersey rely on the ITE of which you are relying?
Every traffic expert in the country
And that's-
uses the ITE Trip Generation 11th edition right now.
And are you familiar with any traffic expert in the country that has ever questioned the ITE numbers?
Like I said before, I've done actual counts at developments after the study's been done, after it's been developed, to just verify these numbers. And in 2 instances I can recall right now in Livingston, and the other one I think was Saddle River, or Saddle Brook, the counts were within 5 or 10%. So like I said, if I'm off by 10%, it's a trip.
Okay. Thank you.
But you asked, but wasn't your specific question, was he aware of any other engineer who had questions about ITE's data? I think
that was my question. Like, you
Yeah,
aware
I
of
thought
any
it-
engineer that doesn't use the IT?
No, that wasn't what you said.
I mean, I think we've.
So the.
No, that wasn't your
You can
question.
ask him whatever question.
You go ahead,
No,
yeah.
you asked him the question, and
You're free to ask him whatever question you wish. If you don't think he answered the question, that's, unfortunate. But you are allowed to ask him any question you wish.
what you asked him
Okay.
was.
Mr. Chairman, I won't take this.
Oh,
I won't take it either.
My turn.
I won't take it either.
My turn. I'm going to ask a question first, then you have to ask a question of the witness. What year IT did you rely on?
What?
What year IT?
The 11th edition, the current edition.
What year?
2021, I believe, 2021. Data
So-
compiled up through there, I believe, yeah.
So it has not been updated since post-pandemic?
Again, we're talking about three
I-
trips. It's a small
It would be
number.
much easier if you responded directly to the questions.
It doesn't, yeah, it doesn't include COVID, correct.
Okay.
When
So
people stayed
If you want
home.
to ask a question of the witness, not of the attorney, feel free.
So my question, or rather, the question that I heard earlier from the attorney directed to you was, were you aware of any other engineers who may have questioned the ITE data?
We wouldn't question it, we would supplement it with additional data. That's how the data is compiled by traffic engineers doing traffic counts, sending it into the ITE. They compile it in this book. So I don't know if it's the word, no, we don't, what
You're
was it
not
again?
aware of any-
Challenging? No, I'm not aware.
Okay, that was it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, for the record,
thank you.
according to ITE Resources, which is a community of
Okay,
transportation.
yeah, but
Let me do it.
the question of the witness was, what version of ITE did he rely on, not what version is out there?
Well, he said the
I-
11th. He said the
I
11th.
didn't remember the year, but the 11th, the current edition, the 11th
He
edition.
said the 11th more than once, and the
Right.
11th
If-
was, the 11th was printed in September of 2021.
Okay,
That's all.
And
that was right.
so effectively, the data would have been not after COVID, is that correct?
Correct,
Mr. Klein?
correct.
Okay. Any other members of the audience who have questions for this witness? Again, just questions, not an opportunity to
Janet
have a
Hubert, 5
later.
Ward Place. First question, where is the engineer? Why is he not here to answer these questions? Can anybody tell us that? This was scheduled, we didn't have an August meeting, and I'd like to know, where is the engineer?
Mr. Chairman, as I stated at the beginning of the meeting, we expect to have the engineer here next meeting to finish. There was only 5 board members who were able to appear this evening. As the board knows, we need 5.
So you assumed it wasn't worth it for him to show up today? But we showed up the last meeting and no one was here. I just would like to know, so you told the engineer not to come tonight because all the board members would not be here. All these people have come here tonight to try to express what we feel, and we are not statistics. Our children have to catch the bus. They're running to the bus to cross the street on Orange Road to go not into East Orange, to go into Montclair to the schools. Did you take that into consideration? I see kids running. There's no crosswalk, and the kids have to cross the street to catch the bus on Orange Road. So then what happens if, I'm sorry, go ahead, answer that.
That's an existing condition, and we're not exacerbating that condition. If there needs to be,
I'm sorry.
Let him finish.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. My bad.
You're good.
Are you finished?
If you,
I'm sorry.
if there needs to be a crosswalk there because of the school bus, you can petition the township, and the engineer for the township would look at that and see if that's warranted.
But you are the problem that's bringing the problem to the neighborhood with extra cars. So then what happens when they can't get out of Pleasant? They come and whip around Ward to come and make the turn to go left on Ward.
I can't imagine somebody so close to the intersection of Pleasant and Orange and not being able to make a left turn again, 2 or 3 cars in an hour trying to make that left turn, wanting to go all the way around to come out to Ward to make the left turn.
All the way around, it's a horseshoe.
Yeah, I know, but I'm
They
saying
do it-
distance-wise, rather than just wait another 30 seconds and then make the left when there's a gap in traffic, to drive all the way around the neighborhood to come out Pleasant when they're going to hit the same amount of traffic.
I have tried to get out of Ward Place onto Orange Road just to get out, and sometimes it's really trying.
So you
It's
go
very
around
trying.
to Pleasant and come out Orange?
Of course not.
So
Of course
you
I
just
don't
asked
do
me if
that.
our guys would, if the traffic from this development would do the opposite.
I just know that during funerals, they do it because they don't even know that it doesn't go around. But your people would definitely do it. And how are you thinking if you've got 2 parents who've got 2 teenagers and they have cars? That's 4 cars. So did you think, well, some of these people who move into this complex may have teenage children?
And there
You've got
could-
3 bedrooms.
There could be people that live there that are empty nesters and are retired, and they
And
don't
they could
go out.
also be all Airbnbs, for what we know,
I don't know about that.
which would also present a new problem. What if, because they're condos, and there's no regulations on condos, there's no regulations on multifamily already, hardly, in Montclair. If they are Airbnbs, and we've got lots of transients coming in, what happens when there's all
Mr.
kinds
Chairman,
of different
the-
people
the-
coming in and out?
The applicant will stipulate that the condominium documents will prevent any short-term leases. Generally, most condominiums I'm familiar with have 6-month minimum leasing, so there will be no Airbnbs, and there would be something that we've talked to the developer about already, and that would not be an issue, so we can cross that one off the list.
Condos are very different from co-ops. Co-ops do not allow anybody else to stay in the unit. We own a co-op in Yonkers. No one can stay in that co-op except, and there are deeded parking spots that go with that space. What will you do if somebody violates that? How are you going to enforce that? And there's 4 or 5 cars.
Mr. Chairman, it'd be like any other condominium regulation, just like there would be a prohibition against hanging signs out the window, just like there'd be a prohibition against parking on the median. It will be enforced just like any condominium in the state of New Jersey.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public who have questions for this witness?
My name is Thomas White. I live 77 Pleasant Way. And where I live, it's sort of a horseshoe. And we have kids playing all the way around the corner all the time, lots of kids. And they've been making the driveway just to come out one way to Pleasant Way. Kids are always playing there. And coming out, as you say, it is a blind intersection because the cemetery is there and it's a fence there on the right-hand side. It's a blind intersection on the right-hand side, check it out. It's bad. And you making traffic come on one side of the place. That's no good.
Do you have a question? Any other members of the audience with questions for this witness?
I do have a question again. Did your data take in consideration of the funerals that come through there? We have multiple funerals that come through Orange Road that will block up Orange Road, block up Pleasant, and block up Ward. How can you say that there's not going to be a lot of traffic? How could you say that the people that live there is going to be coming out at the times that you said, between 7 and 9 and 5 and whatever, 4 and 6? So how is it that you're going to dictate on their work schedule for them to leave at those particular times?
Can I jump in
Yes,
before you get
sir.
too many questions in, before I lose my train of thought? So I'm not telling anybody that they have to leave or come to this site any particular hour. What I'm saying is, based on the data that we have from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, that a 7-unit multifamily development, low-rise development with 7 units will generate approximately 3 trips during the highest peak hour. You're shaking your head, but let me finish. And say it's 7:30 to 8:30. Yes, before 7:30, there may be a car or two that come out. Somebody that's got to go early to work. There may be one that comes out at 10 a.m. because they have to go to a doctor's appointment. They're off from work that day. I'm not saying that only traffic will come in and out during that hour. I'm saying that the highest hour, which is what traffic engineers study, is 1 hour between 7 and 9 and 1 hour between 4 and 6, and that's what we expect. Hours on either side of that, I would expect about the same, if not less. Middle of the day, again, less. So I'm not dictating that anybody has to leave or come and go at any particular hour. I'm just saying what I predict will be the number of trips coming in 1 hour between 7 and 9 and 1 hour between 4 and 6. And as far as a funeral goes, we're not adding to the funeral traffic. We're just adding a trip sometime between 7 and 9 that's going to come out. If the funeral is going by, they'll have to wait for the funeral to go by. If a fire truck is going by, they're going to have to wait for the fire truck to go by, an ambulance, a school bus. We're just adding 3 or 4 trips in or out during 1 hour, and a couple of trips on either side of that hour.
So can I ask you this question? How is it that you know what time, when these people move into these condos, how are you going to know their timing? Like, how could you
Let me start
say-
over.
how
No,
could
no, I got it. So let me start over. So when we do traffic studies with traffic counts, we study the hours of 7 to 9. So if this was 100 units and it was, or more than 100 units, have to be over 200 units to generate more than 100 peak hour trips. If it was 200 units, I would go out at the intersection of Pleasant and Orange, and I would count. My wife would count that intersection. I'd go down to Ward and count that intersection, and we'd count between 7 and 9. We summarize the data every 15 minutes. Then we find the 4 highest 15-minute periods in an hour and say it's 7:15 to 8:15. Then we would analyze that without the development. Then we would analyze it with the development. In this case, to analyze it with the addition of 3 trips, if I counted it on Tuesday and went back on Wednesday, the amount of traffic on Orange Road is going to vary by more trips than is generated by this development. So there's not any reason to analyze this from a traffic engineering point of view. It's a qualitative analysis that I just told you that it's going to generate far, far less than 100 peak hour trips, which even the 100 peak hour trips may not have an impact. She's not even done
I
yet.
answer one thing. There is a school bus stop. School's opening. They'll be swarming there.
Okay, you have to ask him a question.
I'm going to piggyback off of Mr. White, because I live around the corner from him. He's been there for ages. He has houses over there as well. And my daughter just graduated from Montclair High School, college student now. She has a car. My son has a car. I have a car. My husband has a car. You have students that go to college, that go to high school, they get their driver's license, and they get cars. Their parents want to buy them a car. Okay, fine, well and good. Where's their car going to go? Not only that, but you got to think as well that, like I said before, it's heavy traffic over there with the cemetery, with New Jersey Transit, with the school buses, the garbage trucks, the ambulance, the delivery. You have all this stuff that comes in and out of Ward Place. And I'm at the top, and I see this. We don't even have room enough when FedEx, UPS, and Amazon, because Amazon is crazy on our block, okay?
You have to ask a question.
So, okay, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So, my thing is, how is all of your data, quote unquote, that you claim is considered accurate. It's not, to us that live in that area, we can't tell that it's accurate. So how do you figure that it's gonna be accurate once this development goes up? If it goes up?
I can only rely on 38, 39 years of experience doing traffic studies, going out and doing check counts at locations where I've done a study and predicted what the trips would be and confirmed that I'm within 5 or 10%. And like I said before, if I'm off by 100%, instead of 3 trips, we're talking about 6 trips. We're not talking about 100+ trips generated by these 7 units in 1 hour.
Did you do it during school time?
I didn't do anything.
No, I'm asking.
I did
no.
my traffic analysis.
Can I ask my question?
Yeah, it's just I didn't do any counts on the road.
Okay.
I didn't count Orange Road. I didn't count Pleasant. I didn't count Ward. I did the trip generation first, and I said, oh, it's only generating 3 or 4 trips. I don't need to go out and do counts and
But-
do an analysis.
Okay. I get that. But what I'm asking, the question that I want to ask you is, first of all, let me make this. You need to be in sight. Forget about your data, forget about your computer, all of that. You have to see for self. It's crazy on Pleasant and Ward. It's crazy. It's you have to come during school hours. If you go,
You'll get an opportunity to say all of this after they're done. He has been very clear. He has not looked at traffic on Orange Road, Ward Place, or Pleasant Way. All he did was look at ITEs, looked at the trip generation. And when you will have every opportunity to comment on why you think that's a problem, but that's his testimony, and the question's been asked a lot of times, and he's been clear he did not go out there and look at traffic. Any other members with questions for this witness? Okay, want to call your next?
I have one last question to ask. Janet Hubert, 5 Fort Place. So basically, your testimony is basically worthless.
Is that a question? My testimony is not worthless. My
Then
testimony.
what good is it if it has nothing, if we're nothing but data and statistics? Your testimony, when you don't know the neighborhood, you've not been to the neighborhood, you know nothing about the neighborhood, you haven't been to it because it's less than so many units.
I've been to the site. I've been to the neighborhood.
There's nobody there right now.
And I used ITE trip generation numbers to predict how many trips will be generated by the 7 units. You're right, there is nobody there.
I'm sorry, sir. I resent highly when you refer to us as data,
I'm
statistics.
not referring to you as data. I'm referring to the
You've
data.
been to the site. The site is not even done. The site is not developed.
I've been to the neighborhood, I should have said. Okay, I'm sorry.
And how
I've been
much
to the-
time did you spend in the neighborhood? Were
I've
you
been to
there
the
between the
neighborhood.
hours of 7 and 9, 5 days a week?
Yeah, I've driven down Orange Road on an occasion. Yes, yes.
Okay, you drove down Orange Road.
Yes.
Have you been there
But
during
again-
school hours?
But again, during the number of trips that's going to be generated by this, if you didn't know this was built and they generated their trips and you were, let's say, down the road where you couldn't see and you counted the traffic on Orange Road, either end of Orange Road, you wouldn't be able to tell that that development was there because the amount of traffic that's generated by it and the variation between the number of trips on Orange Road from Tuesday to Wednesday to a week in July and a week in September and a week in April, they're going to vary by more than the amount of trips that's generated by this.
Where do you live, may I ask?
West Orange.
Okay, but you don't live on the south end, correct?
I doubt there's, I'm not actually, I'm a volunteer on my planning board, so I don't do any work in my town, but yeah, I don't live in every town that I work in. That's correct.
Okay, it's just a tad frustrating for us.
Any other members of the public with questions for this witness?
I just need a clarification, please. The studies were done on December 23rd and 24th?
I didn't study the traffic. I did a traffic engineering evaluation. I generated the trips based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation 11th edition, the current edition. And when I look at the number of trips that are going to be generated during the peak hours for 7 units, it's such a low number that I don't study the traffic on the road. I just say that it's going to generate less than 5 trips in a peak hour, and it's not going to have a significant impact on traffic based on that. Based on my experience, if it generated 50 trips, it may have, but it's generating a handful of trips during one peak hour.
Can you clarify, please? You mentioned the date, December 24th.
No, December 4th is just the date of my report. That's all that is.
Just
the date of my report, correct.
So, but you said that you and your wife stand and you do observations.
On other projects that generate greater than 100.
Observation of the neighborhood.
Correct, because it generates such a low number of trips, that's not warranted. We don't need to do a traffic study for 7 units that are generating 3. I'm here to present that, in my opinion, 7 units will generate such a low number that it won't be realized in a change in level of service or an increase in average delay at the intersections.
I just want to mention that my previous experience with a traffic study that was presented in this room about 1.5 years ago, the traffic study was done in such an incredibly low traffic calendar date. It was in between school break and the beginning of January. And I think that when things are observed, if they should warrant being observed, you have to consider when they're being observed. Thank you.
Sorry, could you state your name?
Yes, Bonnie Abrams Vogel.
James Dargan, 391 Orange Road. I would like to invite you to come to my house. I'm facing Ward Place, and I have a view of Pleasant Way. From my porch, you'll be able to see the traffic that goes in and out of that street. It's amazing. All day long. And I sit there and I told my wife, it's just a matter of time we're going to have a tragic accident because there's a bus that turns on Ward Place and stop on the corner. I'm telling you what they're going to add more to it.
Is there a question, sir?
It's going to add more children.
But
if you got children.
But the bus is stopping there today, so it'll just stop and pick up an extra child or two.
No,
we're not changing the bus routes.
I'm not talking about picking up an extra child. I'm talking about extra children that will be there. Extra children that will come from the 8 units or 7 units.
Right.
That will come.
Just like the kids that live on Ward and live on Pleasant.
On to, which is going to be another problem. It's already a problem.
What's
it's
that
already
problem?
a problem.
What's that problem? Well, that's what I'm saying. That's an existing condition that you need to let the township engineer know about.
But you did the study of the traffic that going in and out, you said.
No, I didn't study traffic because it generates such a low number of trips. I didn't study the traffic. We're talking about 2 or 3 trips in or out in an hour.
It's more than that, sir. It's much more than that. It's much more than that. Anyone that want to come and view, I'm 391 Orange Road, open.
Any other members of the public who have questions for this witness? Want to call your next witness?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Call Matthew Flynn, professional planner. If you could stand up and be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give before this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah, I do.
State your full name and spell it for the record, please.
Matthew Flynn, Flynn. Business address is 101 Gibraltar Drive, Morris Plains, New Jersey. I'm employed by John McDonough Associates, LLC.
Mr. Flynn, you are a professional planner licensed by the state of New Jersey, is that correct?
I am.
Can you give the board, please, the benefit of your educational background and your professional credentials?
Sure. My education comes from Rutgers University. I have my master's degree in planning and public policy. I have my professional planner's license in the state of New Jersey, as well as my national licensure, which is the AICP license. I've testified before over 100 boards across the state. I believe this is my first time to have the pleasure to be here, though.
Your license is current in the state of New Jersey?
Yes.
Have you ever been denied the opportunity to testify as an expert in the state of New Jersey?
I have not.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that Mr. Flynn be accepted as a professional planner.
We accept him even has the same speech mannerisms as Mr. McDonough is.
I thought it was just me, Mr. Chairman, but...
You got to learn somewhere.
Mr. Flynn, you have had the opportunity to review the application, to review the Township of Montclair. We can't hear your mic. Mr. Flynn, you've had the opportunity to review the application, the Township of Montclair Master Plan, and the Township of Montclair zoning ordinance, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give the board, please, the benefit of what you have learned with regard to this application and how it, in your opinion, would be beneficial to the township?
Sure. So I do have an exhibit I'd like to pass out. I'm not sure what we're up to at this point.
This is
9? Okay. A10, okay.
A10. So Exhibit A10 consists of 3 photos taken by my office on May 1st, 2024. What we did was we flew a drone up in the air and we basically took photographs of the site as well as the surrounding neighborhood.
If I may approach, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, I said 3 pages. It's actually 4 pages.
Can we see it on the screen?
Are we going to see it?
Any extras there? I have 3.
We need a copy as well.
While that's being distributed, just for the record, it's entitled Planning Exhibits. So this is entitled Planning Exhibits for Montclair Sky BNC LLC, 400 Orange Road, Township of Montclair. Basically, I'll let the board and just kind of flip through this on their own, but essentially just to walk through quickly, sheet 1 just shows the view of the property looking west. Orange Road is left to right on the page here, and then we can see the 2 side roads that go east-west to the 2 sides. Obviously, what we have today is a vacant garden center, so we have an existing non-conforming commercial use in a residential zone. Obviously, what we've heard at this point is that we are replacing that with a residential use, which we think is more in line with the intent of the zone. Again, replacing commercial with residential. Sheet 2 just shows a view of the property looking south. We get a view of the substantial underutilization of the property as it currently sits. We see substantial pavement. Overall, I would say just certainly an eyesore in the context of this neighborhood. Just flipping through more, sheet 3 is now looking east, so now we can see Orange Road sort of beyond the property. I'm just going to keep going here, and then finally sheet 4 is just an aerial view looking straight down. Really the point that I want to get across on sheet 4 is the substantial size of the property. We're looking at a lot that's over 23,000 square feet in area. There is no lot area requirement in the zone, but I am going to pass around a second exhibit shortly that gives the board some perspective as to the other lot sizes in the area. I would say there is a great variety, but I would say that the vast majority of properties in the area are substantially smaller than what we have on the subject site. By way of background, again, we do have frontage on Orange Road, Pleasant Way, and Ward Place. We're in the R160 one-family residential zone. Existing use of vacant retail garden center. Proposed use, of course, 7 new townhouses, which is a reduction from the 8 that was originally proposed. In fact, it's also a reduction from what was originally approved for this property. 8 units were approved in 2007, and now, of course, we are down to 7 units. Importantly, and I'll get to why I think this is an important fact briefly, each of those 7 units has 3 bedrooms. Really, the reason that I find that important is that if this lot were subdivided into several single-family homes, you could conceivably have houses that have 6, 7 bedrooms, which is not abnormal in terms of the context of the neighborhood. I do have access to property record cards, which do lay out number of bedrooms in the area. Again, the reason I say that is kind of just echoing the conversation that we had while the traffic engineer was up here. If you did have a single-family dwelling with substantially more bedrooms, you could conceivably have more people with cars, larger families, and the like. Here we're looking at substantially smaller scale living, which would, I would say, conceivably have less car ownership than if we were looking at single-family. So, with that, I think I'll pass out exhibit, what is it, A11 now? Which is a single page prepared by my office on July 16th, 2024. And what exhibit A11 is a simple, it shows a couple things really. First, the properties that are shown in yellow are the properties in our zone. The one property that's shown in blue, which is the Canterbury Park, that's a separate zone. But really the point here is that I have outlined all of the I've outlined basically the non-single family properties in the area, non-detached housing style developments here. Obviously I've outlined our property, 400 Orange Road. And if we look north, right across Ward Place, there is an apartment development. 2 doors down from that, there is another apartment development. If we continue down further, we see a substantially large property that is also apartments. And then just beyond that, we see an office development. Also, obviously, we do have the cemetery across Pleasant Way. And catty corner to our property, we do have some non-residential uses. Here I'm showing the beauty salon and then a commercial establishment at 405 Orange Road. So just to put that all on the record, really the point there is that Orange Road is characterized by non-single family development, especially on our side of the street. If you were to travel from the south to the north, I'll call it up Orange Road, you would be passing several non-single family developments. So the reason I bring that up is because we are seeking a use variance this evening. The board is required to find, or the board is required to look at whether the property is suitable for the proposed use. So the reason that we have to do this for a use variance is, I think, obvious because the use is not permitted in the zone. So we need to look at the property itself and assess whether that use is appropriate for this property. Like I said, the board did find in 2017 that 8 townhouses is more consistent with the master plan than the existing garden center. It will greatly enhance the residential character of the neighborhood. The board also found that the lot is larger than the majority of other lots in the area, which I think we can see on Exhibit A11. So single family may not be the most desirable option considering that. That I pulled from the resolution from the 2007 approval in regards to the site suitability findings. However, I do have several other findings in regard to site suitability that I'd like to bring up to the board. What we can see on Exhibit A11 is that we are across the street from Rosedale Cemetery. So there is, I would say, built-in light, air, open space. Obviously, there is no immediate neighbor in that direction, which mitigates any potential impacts that this property will have on its neighbors. Similarly, with 3 frontages, I would say there is adequate light, air, and open space in all directions. The reason I say that is because the width of the street itself, we have 50 feet across Ward Place, 50 feet across Pleasant Way, and 66 feet across Orange Road. These are built-in dimensions in the roadways that are atypical of this property, since we do have 3 frontages. I think the board can clearly think of the typical residential home that has a residential property on one side, another residential property on the other side. This is a distinct piece of property. We do have that built-in buffer of the roadways on 3 of our 4 sides of the property. I'll get to this more in just a moment, but I would say that the configuration that we're proposing, which is this U-shaped development that has buildings that face each of the 3 frontages, is consistent with the master plan, and I'll get to that, but the master plan does note several times throughout that it recommends that there should be buildings facing each street. And since we do have 3 frontages, if we were to propose a single-family home, for example, which is permitted here, you would end up with 2 side facades of that building facing roadways, which I would say is undesirable from a planning perspective, and that's also recognized in the master plan. In terms of the fact that we are proposing 6 units as opposed to the 1 that's permitted in the zone, I'm sorry, 7 units, I misspoke. In terms of that, I would say higher unit count. Canterbury Park, we can see on my Exhibit 11 here, is in close proximity. It provides several residential amenities, such as a walking trail, children's playground, basketball court, tennis court. So we're not putting residents in the middle of nowhere, so to speak. There is that park with substantial residential amenities for these residents to amenitize. There are also plenty of bus stops along Orange Road. So again, this is a well-served area in pretty much any regard from a mass transit perspective, as well as the availability of that open space in Canterbury Park. In terms of neighborhood compatibility, in terms of the use itself, I think we can again look at Exhibit A11, which shows 390 Orange Road, which is coming up as an apartment building based on tax records, 382 Orange Road, 364 Orange Road, another apartment building. That one came up as a 38-unit apartment complex. 340 Orange Road is a senior housing development. Again, a beauty salon that's catty-corner to us at 401 Orange Road. And then commercial right next door to that at 405 Orange Road. All of that, this is important to note, is in the same zone as what we're proposing, and as the address is implied, they are all also on Orange Road. And again, I bring that up just to speak to the neighborhood compatibility and the general trend that we see along this roadway. So I would say that the site suitability standard is adequately justified by virtue of all of that testimony that I just put on the record. We also have to look at the positive criteria, so the purposes of zoning. This comes from the municipal land use law. Several purposes of zoning are set forth that I think are furthered as a result of our application. To start, Purpose A, promotion of the general welfare. We're talking about brand new housing stock in a beautiful new townhouse development. Again, replacing non-residential with residential in a residential zone. I think that's to the benefit of the neighborhood at large. Purpose G, variety of uses in appropriate locations. I'll fall back on the site suitability testimony in terms of neighborhood compatibility from a use standpoint, the built-in light, air, open space that's provided of the property, and everything else that I mentioned. Like I said, in terms of variety of uses in appropriate locations, this use was deemed appropriate at a higher density at that 8 units, and we are proposing 7 units this evening. Purpose M, efficient use of land. The master plan notes that this is a nearly fully built-out town, and finding suitable locations for infill development like this is good planning. In other words, there are few vacant properties to look at within Montclair. So when we find something for infill development or redevelopment, that's certainly a good thing, as opposed to expanding the development footprint per se. Again, in terms of efficient use of land, we are getting outdoor decks, and I'll fall back on the fact that there is Canterbury Park. So again, it's not going to appear crammed in. These residents are going to have nice, spacious units that are highly modern. There is going to be outdoor space. Purpose I, desirable visual environment. Again, I think we saw the architecture at the last meeting or the meeting before that. Obviously, a much better alternative than what's there today, which could legally remain, of course. This is a very well thought out plan. The architect did provide us with a, I think, 27-page slideshow going over pretty much any aspect of the architecture that I could think of. Has been thoroughly thought through. This isn't a developer that's coming in here with a random design that he's just seeking to put in a box. This is something that is responsive to the property itself. We've been responsive to the neighbors' concerns and providing circulation in and out on one street as opposed to the Ward Place. It's only along Pleasant Way. So I would say it's a highly responsive design to everything that has been discussed thus far. And again, the benefit of getting buildings that front along each and every one of these roadways as opposed to having a side facade fronting one or more. So all of that goes towards the municipal land use law, the purposes of zoning. I think we do satisfy purposes A, G, M, and I for all of those reasons. The flip side to that is the negative criteria, so it's my opinion that there would be no substantial detriment to the public or to the zone. This use is not going to stand out in the context of the area. I think that's clear with Exhibit A11 here. As you drive or walk down Orange Road, you see several multifamily developments. You see a senior housing development. You see some commercial. Obviously, you see the cemetery. So there is a presence of non-single family happening along Orange Road at this location. And so the point is that this is not going to stand out as being the only multifamily lot in the area or even along Orange Road. In terms of substantial detriment to the zone, I would say there is none. I looked at the master plan, and I'll get into all of the bulk variances that we're requesting in just a moment. But again, I'm still on the use variance at this point. I did look at the master plan. Again, there are several mentions of the fact that the master plan wants buildings that front along each street as opposed to side facades. Here we are proposing this creative U shape, which is responsive to that recommendation. In terms of the master plan, again, the township is mostly built out, and it does constitute infill development, which is most of the development that this board is likely to see due to that fact. There is I'll quote from the master plan: Montclair cannot remain a static community and still meet the needs of its residents. Empty nesters, seniors, as well as young people just entering the workforce typically prefer smaller homes. End quote. And so the point there is that the design and the living arrangement and the townhouses that we're proposing, although it is not permitted like single family in this zone, it is filling a need that the master plan does recognize. And I think, again, just to quote, Montclair cannot remain a static community and still meet the needs of its residents. I think there's an implication there that we do need to find creative solutions like this. We're certainly not saying that in every R160 zone this is going to be appropriate, but in this case, if we look at this particular property, we do think that this is a nice opportunity that the township can take advantage of. So all of that goes towards the negative criteria. I would say, just to sum up in terms of the use variance, that the positives substantially outweigh the negatives. I think the board has some good logical foundational reasons to look at in terms of the property itself, what makes this a suitable location for what's being proposed, the benefits that this is going to deliver to the community. Again, remembering that this is an existing vacant commercial establishment. And again, the flip side to that is the negative criteria, and I think I addressed the intent of the master plan. There's good language in there that I think we can look at, as well as the intent or the impact to the neighborhood at large and how this is actually going to be compatible, despite the fact that it is a use variance. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Flynn, you've covered the D1, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you've looked at the other bulk variances. I'm really just letting you take a breath. That's okay. Okay.
And a drink of water.
You've looked at the other bulk variances, correct?
I have,
Okay.
yes.
And can you give your opinion? We have the bulk variance with regard to the 3 stories, with regard to the front yard setback, rear yard setback, building coverage, and impervious, correct?
Correct.
Okay, can you start with the bulk variances and give the board the benefit of your testimony there, please?
Sure. So I'm going to list out the C variances qualitatively, and then I'll go into the statutory criteria for grant of those. So in terms of building stories, we are proposing 3 stories, whereas 2.5 stories is what's permitted in the zone. I think it's important to note, and this was asked of us specifically, and we do have these figures, it was asked of the applicant to provide percentages of that 3rd story as a percentage of the story below it. So we do have 7 units, and if this doesn't make sense, cut me off. The percentage of the 4th floor for each of those units as a percentage of the 3rd floor below it is 42.3%, 44.4%, 39.3%, 41.3%, 41.3% again, 36.6%, and 42.8%. I think that's actually interesting to note because of the fact that we are required to have up to 2.5 stories, but none of our 3rd stories actually encompass greater than 50% of the floor below it. And again, I just put out that on the record because those numbers were specifically requested of us. Moving on, front setbacks. I would say this is a hardship because we have 3 front setbacks, Orange Road, Ward Place, and Pleasant Avenue. Each of those require 25 feet for front setbacks. We're proposing 20 feet for Orange Road, 15 feet for Ward Place, and 20 feet again for Pleasant Avenue. And I would say that is a substantial hardship, which I'll get to in a moment. Rear setback, we're proposing 24.25 feet, whereas we need 31.5 feet, which is a function of the lot depth. You're required to have 25% of your lot depth to be a rear yard. And I would say notably that does only apply to one of our townhouse units. It originally applied to 2 townhouse units, but we were able to pull one of those out of that rear setback. Building coverage, we're proposing 28.8%, whereas you're only allowed to go up to 25%. From the first time we brought this application to the board, we were actually at 34.3%, so we were able to bring that significantly down to 28.8%. Impervious coverage, we're proposing 59.55%, whereas we're allowed 35.7%. Again, a substantial reduction from the 72.3% that was proposed originally. That comes down to 2,300 square feet of increased open space on the property. Notably, because we are looking at a use variance, I would say that the impervious requirement of 35.7% is not necessarily appropriate for a multifamily development like we're proposing. By virtue of the fact that when we're looking at a single-family development, you do have the implication of larger yards, usable yards. Just to put that into perspective, in the R3 zone, where this use is permitted, you would be allowed to go up to 65%, and we are under that. Again, that's just for a comparison purpose. We do need the variance, of course. So to wrap all of that up into the statutory criteria for those C variances, I think we can look at the C2 balancing test. We can look at all of the benefits that I went through for the use itself, and they substantially outweigh any detriments. I would say all of those benefits that I set forth for the use relief carry forth here in the extent that all C relief is necessary to effectuate the use on this property. Just to give an example of what I mean by that, again, for a multifamily development like this, you would be typically seeing higher percentages for impervious. And again, if we look at a zone where that use is permitted, you do see those higher percentages. So the point is that for a use like this, I would say the C relief that we're requesting is appropriate and warranted. In terms of negative criteria for that relief, I would say that we do comply with parking. We do comply with building height. We're just about 4 feet under the requirement in terms of building height. Although we do need a variance for number of stories, again, we're 4 feet under the maximum threshold of what would be permitted in terms of feet. And so that is sort of confusing, but I would say that the number of stories metric is more of an aesthetic control rather than a massing control, because by pure massing, you could actually get a higher building. I touched on coverage and setbacks. I touched on the fact that there is adequate light, air, open space happening pretty much all around our property, and the fact that building coverage is actually a reduction over what's there and what was originally proposed. Like I said, I think we can also look at the C1 hardship test. Again, I asked the board at the outset to imagine your typical single-family home. You wouldn't necessarily be thinking of a house that has 3 frontages. Typically, you would think of a house that has 2 side setbacks, a residential house on one side, a residential house on the other side, and then a residential house behind you. The fact that we have three frontages means that we have to meet that front yard setback to all three sides. That's 25 feet on all 3 of those sides. If we had any side yard setbacks, we would only be required to have a 6-foot setback to those side property lines. We don't have the benefit of having any side setbacks, so we do have to look at that 25 feet in all 3 of those sides. So basically, the hardship test looks at the land itself as opposed to the development itself. Even though we are requesting that variance, it really is part and parcel of the land rather than the building mass that we're proposing. And I would say that all of that C relief is justified by C2 and C1. The applicant need only meet one of those standards. The fact that the applicant meets both, I think, speaks to the appropriateness of this property, and especially the uniqueness and peculiarity of this property. To close, again, I would say this is a substantially appropriate project given the site suitability testimony, given the mitigating factors of light, air, open space, the mitigating factors of having these built-in buffers that are those street widths on 3 of our sides, that built-in light, air, open space of the cemetery across the street, that those pedestrian amenities of Canterbury Park, some commercial establishments, the neighborhood compatibility that I spoke about that we can see on Exhibit A11, and not to mention the fact that this is, of course, a substantial improvement over what we have today, which is that vacant commercial building, flipping that back to residential, making it more in line with everything that's happening around us, I think is to the direct benefit of the community at large. I spoke to the fact that we do have a substantially larger lot than several of the other properties around us. Again, if we look at Exhibit A11, we can see some of these property lines and we can get a sense of how large this property is. Just based on, like I said, there is a great variety, so it's hard to say the typical lot size is X. But by looking at some of the lots on our block itself, several of them were 50 feet by 100, so that's 5,000 square feet. We almost have 5 times that typical, and again, I hesitate to use the word typical, but we have almost 5 times that I'll say typical lot area in the immediate area. So having said that, I think that this property does warrant a creative approach to both architecture and use, and of course planning as a whole, and I think the applicant has done a great job at striking the right balance, being responsive to the neighbors and the concerns of the boards. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer, or if there's any redirect.
Mr. Church, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time.
Mr. Vieira?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Flynn, I do have a few questions. So you mentioned earlier in your testimony neighborhood compatibility, so I just want to understand how your analysis comes about. So do you consider only the block, the street? How far out do you go to come up with your recommendations?
I could strike a line now and figure out what the distance north-south along Orange Road is on Exhibit A11, but I think the simplest way to answer your question is that I looked at what I would say is a reasonable walking distance along Orange Road, looked at the land uses themselves, and the conclusion that I came up with, I would say, is if we were looking at a property that's surrounded by single-family homes and there wasn't a multifamily or a commercial property within a reasonable walking distance, I would have a totally different conclusion about this property. But the fact that if you were to walk up and down Orange Road, you do have several non-single-family uses, especially on our side of the street. Like I said, it's not going to stand out as being incompatible because we do have other similar uses nearby.
Okay, thanks. And so the other question that I had is, during your analysis, do you look at only the proposed development, or do you compare with another development? So for example, you have a multifamily development proposed now. Do you compare versus a single-family subdivision? Do you, or not?
I mean, the answer to your question is no, because I'm required to look at the plans that are put before me and to come up with a conclusion based on those. But I would also say that, again, going back to the site suitability testimony and the unique characteristics of this property, it does make it very hard to consider a single-family house on this lot, and what that would look like. How many times could we subdivide this property? Would that be a better zoning alternative with all of these different driveways for each single-family house? That was kind of the point that I was trying to make by saying that this is a substantially larger lot than some of the other homes. With a 5 by 100 square foot lot, just for example, you could fit that in here almost 5 times. Conservatively, if you were to say that you could get, I don't know, 4 lots out of this, you know, I think it's worth considering that you would have 4 separate driveways. You could be dealing with a whole other host of issues. And I look at the unique characteristics and I look at the fact that this is appropriate.
Thank you.
Mr. Griffith?
So am I hearing you right that you're inferring that if we put 4 separate single-family residence houses there, you think it would be more traffic or a greater impact on the neighborhood than if we put 7 units? Sorry, I apologize. So am I hearing you right when you say that if we put 4 single-family residences on this lot, that it would have greater impact than the 7 units that are being proposed?
From a traffic standpoint, I would have to defer that to our traffic engineer, for obvious reasons, I think. But I would say that, like I said, when I analyzed properties in the area along Orange Road, I saw single-family homes with up to 6 bedrooms. So I would say they're
6 or
conducive
7.
to larger families. A member of the public did mention that there were, I can't remember the exact number, but every member of their family owned a car. I would say that townhouse living is conducive to more smaller families that, again, each of our units has 3 bedrooms, so there is a certain limitation to that.
I don't know, the physics of everybody filling up their bedrooms just because they have them with children seems a little specious to me. You mentioned that there's 3 sides where you have a major setback, but you don't have any setback between the units within. Once you're on the lot and once you step back from the street, the units don't have any setback requirements between each unit, right?
The distance between the buildings themselves on our property, is that what you're talking about?
Correct, yes.
I believe there's a requirement in the ordinance that we actually comply with in terms of building-to-building separation on our property, so that's a non-issue. We comply with the ordinance.
What is the limit? Because I didn't, looks to me like there's, I don't know, 4 units?
If I recall correctly, it was 10 feet, I think, but I would have to just double-check. I'm doing that now.
And that's why there's the gaps between the units? I apologize for my ignorance.
Yeah,
It's
that's
an honest question.
That's correct. There is no variance required for the interior common walls, let's say. The 10 feet is required. There was an iteration of these plans that did not have 10 feet, and then because the 10 feet is required, this final version has 10 feet between the buildings.
Understood, thank you. On the back side of the building, I've heard this percentage about the 3rd floor mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the point that it makes. I guess my concern is on the back side of the building that faces the property line, the neighbors on that side, not the street, so it's not as public, but it's still public to the people that live there. And the massing is bulky by comparison because it doesn't have the roof line coming down, so it appears larger and more owners, if you will. That's combined with the side yards, the walls of the building that face that property line don't have any windows. It's rather brutal, in my opinion.
I mean, I would say there's
I
a...
ask you
yeah.
as a planner, what's your opinion of that?
Sure. So just to clarify, the property line you're talking about is actually a rear setback, not a side setback. Just
Correct, yes.
Just to make the,
Yeah.
just to be clear. So again, we do comply by, I think, 3.5 feet in terms of the actual height of the building. Even though we are requesting a variance for number of stories, the actual massing complies. So we could conceivably get even higher and not need an additional variance.
I don't agree with your point, the massing. You said the height complies.
Correct.
And you're 3 feet below the maximum height. But the
Correct.
massing doesn't comply, that's why it's called a 3-story. If the roof came down on the backside further, you could be a 2.5-story building. But that's not what you do. On the backside, you cut the roof up high so you can get that outdoor deck. And you square off the building and you have a flat roof back there. That's the difference. That's how the
Yeah.
code's written.
I just
No?
want to clarify the plans. I'm not answering the question. The rear of the buildings are 2 stories. And there are windows as required. All windows are, where required, there are windows. So we're
On
not
the-
seeking a
the-
variance for windows.
The walls that face, like the driveway, that
Correct.
face that property line, there aren't any windows in that wall.
And the reason for that was, I think, the privacy issue, so that, I think that was the testimony.
I
But
don't,
I'm-
I've heard that testimony.
Okay.
I don't agree with that testimony.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. There's bathrooms and there's
Right.
stairs there. I own a house. There are windows in my bathrooms, and there are windows on the landing of the stair. And, and I think that's generally true in most houses in Montclair. But that is not the case on that wall. There's no windows. There's bathrooms and there's stair landings along that wall. I think it would really help make the building fit in and feel more like a residential building if it had some windows in those walls and those locations.
Yeah, I think if...
Fitting in it from a planning point of view, since that...
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a give and take. Like council mentions, I think privacy was the reason that there weren't at this point, and it could go either way. If it's the pleasure of the board to add windows, we can certainly add windows to that wall. It wouldn't be a problem.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Flynn.
How are you?
Good. So I just have before me the architectural plans, and I just want to run down the zoning table again with you because there was a couple things that you mentioned that are variances that I didn't notice on the architectural table. For example, the Orange Road front yard setback, that is going to require a variance, you said, correct?
Yes.
Okay. On the topic of the front yard setbacks, are you familiar with what the side yard setback is of this zoning area? I'm not.
Based on my understanding of how it's being interpreted, because of the several
Mhm.
frontages, it's 3 front yards and a rear yard. No, there is no side yard.
Oh, I'm sorry. A better question to ask would be, like, if those were side yards, what would the side yard setback be?
6
for the-
feet.
6 feet. Okay.
It's
Thank
6
you.
feet on one side and 10 feet on the other.
Okay. And then moving down for the building height, you mentioned that you're about 3 or 4 feet below the building height.
Correct.
The architectural plan shows the building height of 35 feet. So, which is is it the style of the roof, or? I was just trying to understand the
Yeah, I understand.
height.
Bear with me.
Sure, of course.
I believe that was modified. We're checking that based on Ms. Talley's last review, and we're checking on that with the architect. But
Okay.
I believe that was modified, as was the total usable square footage of the percentages that Mr. Flynn had testified to.
Okay.
To try to bring it more into compliance. You have it, man?
So then, this should be, of course, available to us in time for the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The answer will be, absolutely.
Okay. So, you mentioned in your testimony about how development is always constantly changing, and that it cannot be static and it has to meet the needs of the residents. How would you say that this project is meeting the needs of the residents?
So that was a quote that I just took from the master plan. It wasn't really my personal. I concur with it, but I'm just saying that was a quote from the master plan. And my interpretation of that, again, quote, Montclair cannot remain a static community and still meet the needs of its residents, end quote. That's page 46 in the Montclair master plan. My interpretation of that is basically that the zoning as is, if we were to interpret it as being static and not give out variances and not find appropriate properties for creative architecture and just have a one-size-fits-all approach to zoning and development, there would be an unmet need in terms of the residential living. And it goes on to say, like I quoted earlier, empty nesters and seniors, as well as young people just entering the workforce, typically prefer smaller homes. So I would say that in terms of what the unmet need is, I think it's noted in the master plan that there is an abundance of single family and maybe not as much as there should be of other opportunities, and this does provide that other opportunity.
So then it would be fair to say that, of your opinion, not to put words in your mouth, but that zoning should be dynamic.
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned how the plans that were put before you, was it the architectural plans that were put before you or the engineering plans? And then a second question would be, how many generations of this plan have you seen? Was there, I know there was a previous generation that had 8 townhouses instead of 7. Were there other designs and considerations that were made before deciding on 7 townhouses?
Yes. Prior to the last hearing that this application was heard, just I guess by way of background, at the last hearing that this application was heard, we did propose the changes from 8 units to 7 units. I did have the opportunity to look at that plan as well as the revised plan that went down to 7 units. To answer your question, I looked at the civil drawings, the engineering drawings, as well as the architectural drawings for both of those renditions. And I'm not sure if you were. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Oh, no. Yeah. So the first plan that you saw was the plan with 8 townhouses.
From this developer, that was the first plan, correct?
Okay. And then I guess my last question would be in terms of the roof. What kind of a roof is it?
Well, I guess you would call it a pitched roof, right?
Pitched roof, sloped roof?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
It's more colonial looking than what it was in the previous iteration. I think there were concerns that we wanted it to look more in line with the other homes that we see in the area, and the roof type that we're proposing now is a result of that.
And Mr. Cruz, I did look it up. The top of the high roof is 35 in some areas, yes.
Okay.
So the 3.5 was updated to 35. The height at the deck is 21 feet.
Okay.
But still not a variance condition for height in terms of numbers.
Yeah. It's within the maximum height.
Yes, of the height.
Right. And then you mentioned that there was like a portion of the building that was like 2 stories or something. That's the 21 foot?
Where the 21 feet.
But that's not right. He's not interpreting the building code correctly. The 2.5 height on the top, because you cut the roof back to allow the 3rd floor to come out onto the deck, they call it a three-story.
On some of the units, based on those percentages that Mr. Flynn had said, that's absolutely true for some of the units, but not all. The 40, where they exceed 40%, we need the variances, yes.
Okay.
But I don't understand this tied to the 40%. That's just that's a square footage measurement on the third floor.
Well,
The code that we're discerning has to do with where the roof cuts off relative to the top of the third floor.
Well, according to your code 347-45A, to permit 3 stories, a half story is defined as a space under a sloping roof that has the line of intersection of the roof surface and the wall face not more than 3 feet above the floor level, and in which space the possible floor area with headroom of 5 feet or less occupies at least 40% of the total floor area of the story directly beneath. What Mr. Flynn had testified to earlier when he first began his testimony was that there are only, I believe, 2 units, maybe it was 3, that exceed this 40%. The others are below.
Wow.
Okay, so that's directly from your code.
Understood. Thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate the
Okay.
clarification.
And I do have a question, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Flynn, just for the board's edification and perhaps the audience. Mr. Flynn, who drafts the master plan?
The town council.
Town planning board?
The planning board, yeah.
Okay, and it's approved, the council approves, but the
council-
planning board adopts?
Exactly.
So it's done within the township of Montclair, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so my last question will simply be, you also mentioned that the lot area of this is 4 times the size of a typical lot area in the town. I'm inclined to agree with that. So I take it there wasn't ever a consideration to do 4 townhouses or like 4 single-family homes or subdivisions. Like none of those ideas of plans ever came to your desk.
Correct.
Okay. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
You've totally lost me on which units require the variance for the 3 stories, so can we go over that?
Yes, yes. Okay. Townhouse number 1 has the 3rd floor of 43.3% of the floor below.
So we would need a variance for that one.
Townhouse number 2, 44.4%. Townhouse 3, 39.3%. So that one is not a variance. Townhouse number 4, 41.3%. Townhouse number 5, 41.3%, again.
Okay.
And one more. Townhouse number 6, 36.6%, so that is the second one that does not need a variance. And then townhouse number 7, 42.8%. So 2 do not need the variance, and the others do. But even among those that do,
That was a simple question. We'll give you a chance to talk
Okay.
longer, but 5 units need a variance from
That's correct.
the 3-story
Yes.
requirement. That's all I wanted to know, make sure
Understood.
I was understanding correctly.
All right.
Okay, so, your Exhibit A11 points that 390 Orange Road has apartments. Do you know how many units are on that property? It's the one right across Ward Place. from this
390. I think you said 290.
390.
390. I'm checking now. I didn't take note of it, but I'll check right now. Based on tax records, that's coming in as 5 units
And,
in one building, of course.
and that property, just bear with me.
If I'm following your train of thought, I think your next question is going to be how large is that property?
Yes, which is about 21,000 square feet,
It's
correct?
coming up for me at 20,700 square feet, so a little smaller.
So roughly 4,000 square feet per unit.
That's fair.
The question, and I had asked, encouraged Mr. McDonough at the last hearing to, in terms of his preparation, hopefully, the size of these units compared to the sizes of the unit, the houses on Ward and Pleasant Way, how do these units compare to the size of those units?
I haven't done that analysis. I mean, if we could easily turn to my exhibit with the aerial imagery and get a sense of how large these buildings are that are around us. Well, yeah, but it's gonna take forever. Okay. So just to take a random example, I'll take the house that the first one in from Ward Place, which would be 8 Ward Place. And looking at property record cards, I'm seeing 4 bedrooms. The first floor consists of 1,064 square feet, and the second floor above that is the same, 1,064 square feet. Moving on to 10 Ward Place, which is just adjacent to the one that I just looked at. First floor, 1,092 square feet. Upper floors, again, the same. That's a 2.5-story building. I think it's the angle.
What's that one? Okay. Okay, I don't want to sit here while you're looking at
Oh, I
property
didn't know
record.
that you were still waiting for me. I'm sorry.
The, the rear yard variance, I will somewhat, the front yards, I understand the issues with. The rear yard, I'm trying to understand the justification for that.
Yeah, well, again, it is sort of one and the same because we do have those 3 substantially large setback requirements on the other 3 sides. It does push us, I'm sorry, it does sort of push us in that direction in order to meet those as much as we possibly can. But again, also, if we were to look at those as a side setback, which visually it's not too far off from being a side yard, we would only be required to have 6 feet. Obviously, it is that variance for being a rear yard, but I think the board can look at those two
I mean, it's either 6 or 10 feet, but
Right, and we're-
I mean, it's, let me do, among the concerns in the neighbors is how this is impacting their property. And the rear yard on Pleasant Way goes back further than the rear yard on Ward Place, yet that is where you are asking for the variance, and that variance in turn is creating the narrow point in the driveway that we discussed with the traffic engineer. And troubled by why would we be granting a variance for the rear yard that's creating a narrowness in the driveway. You know, it seems to be creating a problem in addition to building closer to the neighbors' houses. And I'm not really understanding the planning rationale for granting that variance.
Well, again, just from a sheer setback standpoint, not discounting what you're saying about the circulation, but from a setback standpoint, we are looking at a neighborhood that can have 6 feet, 10 feet between property lines. So we are looking at existing houses in the neighborhood that can conceivably be 6 feet apart from each other.
Right, and if
Here we're giving them over 24 feet.
Right, but if you, and I'm going to get to my larger point in a second, but this is leading up to it. But if you were doing a conventional subdivision with a house fronting on Pleasant Way, yes, you could have either a 6 or 10 foot setback on that side, but you're not. And and my larger question is, normally when you're doing multifamily townhouses like this, one of the benefits is the creation of more open space, green space, however you want to call it, on the property. But that's not being accomplished here. And partially it's not being accomplished because of the size of the units. And, you know, on the one hand, I understand subdividing the property and creating single families is awkward. And has some consequences in terms of multiple curb cuts. But we're not getting any of the benefits that you would normally associate with clustering the housing units. And, you know, so, and that's compounded by, you know, not only is the house closer to the rear yard, but you're running the driveway right along that property line. Yes, keeping the required setback for a driveway, but you're suddenly having a lot of intense development bordering the house on Pleasant Way that wouldn't otherwise be there.
So just my rebuttal to that would be, and just before I forget, you did mention that we aren't increasing landscaping. The existing pervious landscape is 6,570 square feet. We're bumping that up to 9,594 square feet. We are decreasing lot coverage from 72.3% to 59.5%. And I think that's evident on my Exhibit A10 showing the vast pavement on the property. So I think that what we're proposing actually is going to be greener. It is going to be softer than what we have today. And again, in terms of, you used the word clustering, that's the reason that I looked at the requirement of the R3 zone and sort of compared that to what is required in the R1 zone. In the R1 zone, there is no clustering. You're required to have single family. So the lot coverage is what it is. In the R3 zone, there is that density that sort of compounds itself, and you do get that clustering, and the coverage requirement in that zone is 65%. And we actually meet that, which is why I said I think this is actually appropriate in terms of the proportion between developed versus undeveloped space on the property.
But you still need the variance for the impervious cover.
Because it's in a single-family zone, yes.
Okay. But
Mr. Chairman, if I could also remind the board, with regard to the size of the units that you have mentioned a couple times, added, the size of the units are somewhat larger. The testimony was about 300 to 350 extra square feet because of a two-car garage. And they were also required to be accessible. And every one of the units is accessible. Therefore, it does require more space. So I just wanted, that was testimony that the architect had given.
Okay. Sticking to asking questions of the witness, are the units all required to be accessible by the ordinance? If you don't know, you can say you don't know.
I don't know the answer to that. I can get that answered for you before the end of the evening, though.
One of the concerns in the township is affordability. And I understand that one unit will be affordable and there'll be a contribution because you're not doing a divisible by 5 number of units. But other than that, what impact is this development going to have about affordability? You know, this is a neighborhood that is what I'll call a working class, moderate income housing area, has been forever. What is the impact of developing these units on this property going to be on that?
So to answer your first question, I do believe that each unit is required to be accessible. That's the answer to your original question. In terms of affordability, are you asking if this property would have an impact on the value of homes in the area?
Yes.
I mean, I would say that replacing this vacant eyesore on the property is certainly not contributing much of value to the neighborhood, and replacing that with anything would conceivably make the property more desirable.
Yeah, but yes, I don't think if the neighbors are seeking to maintain the property in its current condition. I may be wrong, but I think it's a question of once these units are built and, you know, other than the affordable unit, how are the prices that they're likely to be sold for going to impact on the values of the neighboring homes in terms of keeping this area not literally affordable in the strict Mount Laurel sense of the term, but affordable in the median income, you know, the 80 to 120% of median, you know, working family range?
I mean, like the master plan says, there is a segment of the population that is looking for smaller, more affordable housing. This does provide that option.
Well,
Would the residents
it's a
have
smaller, I own a house.
Sure.
These units are all bigger than my house. So I'm, you know, an empty nester, and I would not be getting a smaller house if I built one of these houses, and I don't think my house is atypical of town. It's not typical of Upper Mountain Avenue, but I don't think it's an atypical sized house, and this is bigger than a lot of houses. These units are bigger than a lot of houses in town.
Right. Well, if you have a single-family home, or even if you live in a 2-family, 3-family, there's substantially more privacy that comes with that type of living. Whereas here, you're talking about sharing this property with, you know, several neighbors. There's less private yard space that you might have in a single-family development. So even if the units might be larger than some other units that are single-family, again, this doesn't come with the typical privacy and ownership aspect that you would get with that type of living.
Okay. Mr. Griffith?
You know, I don't pretend that this is something that has to be done or needs to be done, but when I looked at the plans, I agree with the size. It's about an average size house in Montclair to my eye. I haven't done any statistics. I'm not going to refer to anything on that. But I was hoping that like one of those units would be cut in two and have, you know, smaller units that would sell for a price significantly less than the others, so that people, you know, people that live alone and have single-family income could afford to buy. And that's the kind of, when I hear the words from the Montclair master plan, say, you know, asking for smaller units, that's what I think I hear. Do you think there's any way to consider something like that?
Are you suggesting to split one of the units in half to, again, get back to the 8 units that was proposed originally?
Yeah, I
just want to make sure I understand your
Yeah,
question,
if
that's
you,
all.
you could take the ground floor and, you know, you could split it horizontally, or you could split it vertically, right? I mean, there's a lot of homes in Montclair that are two-family houses that you know, one family lives on the first floor, another family lives on the upper floor. And you could do that with one of these units, or you could literally take the unit Mr. Harrison was referring to, that's pinching your sidewalk, pinching your drive, and pinching the backyard setback, and cut it in two and take the other half and put it on the other side next to Townhouse 7. You have the same square footage. You're going to sell the same amount of square footage. You're going to get the same money back in your pocket. But you gave 2 units, you got 8 units. You're addressing a smaller, you're providing an opportunity for somebody to buy a lower price unit. I mean, I work with people that they're not married, that they're in New York, they work hard, they can barely pay the rent for the apartments they've got. They'd love to move out here if they could afford to buy something, but they can't.
Yeah, I mean, just to, I guess.
It's just an idea.
Certainly consider it and see if the design works. You know, take everything back to the owner and the architect, and
Understood.
certainly sounds good to me, but I don't count. So.
Yeah.
And again, we had something that had, I'm looking at the old site plan now, and I'm looking at the building footprints that we were proposing when we had the 8. Obviously, they're smaller.
Mhm.
So again, it's a balancing act. We're trying to strike the right balance, and this is just where we are now.
I guess I want to say that I do think it's impressive how far the design has come and how far it's changed and how much it has responded to the input. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one more. For the in preparation for the testimony from the civil engineer, are you aware at this time, and I'm not going to hold you to it, but just are you aware at this time if there's going to be further revisions to the engineering plan or another response to the Neglia engineering comments?
It's my understanding, Mr. Cruz, that Mr. Norberto Hernandez, I think.
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez and our engineer had a very lengthy conversation on Monday, today's Wednesday, on Monday of this week, that they went through each of Mr. Hernandez's points.
Okay.
And that there would be a mutual resolution of all of those issues, which it's my expectation that we'll take care of at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
It would be helpful if we get that before the next, so I don't have to ask, and Mr. Cruz doesn't have to ask 3 million engineering questions.
Helpful to all of us, Mr. Chairman. I concur.
Are there members of the public who have questions for this witness?
Bonnie Abrams-Fogel. I have a question and a comment. In the process of, I know you work on numbers and data, but when you read a master plan that was written many, many years ago, that's actually in the process of being rewritten, did you get any idea that perhaps there might be other resources and ways to look at shifts in the population? And by example, I mean, mine is just based on my personal experience. But of the 8 families I can identify in my mind that I know well, we're from the same religious house of worship. In the last 4 years, when they've sold their houses in Montclair, none of them stayed in Montclair. They either moved to surrounding towns. Many of them left Essex County because of the taxes. All of them were displeased with the overdevelopment and traffic in Montclair, which is a nightmare. I say that as what having buried one of my best friends October 29th from the way people drive here. And so I do not see this mention of this being for empty nesters as being realistic. I also know dozens of people who've lived primarily in the 3rd and 4th Ward for many generations, and none of their kids can afford to live here. They're kids who've gone to college, gotten master's degrees. They can't. In my own building, which is a very poorly run condo, which is much different than the co-op I lived in New York City that was very well run, the rents, because of all the new building in the last 9 years that I'm here, because owners in condos can generally rent to people that don't need to be vetted, have doubled. So I do not have, of the 58 units, more than half of them are young people, none of whom are Montclairians. They're all up here from Manhattan and Brooklyn and other places, and I know that because all the young men wear flannel shirts and knit hats when it's 80 degrees, okay? So the information that you've gotten from the master report that you're taking as being legitimate is not legitimate in my experience and the experience of most people I know. What you are building is being built to attract people who have a lot more money than the working class here, and not to serve our community.
This Toller was waiting patiently.
If that was a may I respond to that, Chair? Or?
Yeah.
If it was a question, yeah, I would just say that, you know, the alternative would be to, I'm assuming, make smaller units and make more of them, which sounds contrary to some of the other sentiment that I'm hearing. So.
Ms. Toller.
Thank you. I'm sorry, your name again?
Matt.
Matt, and you work for?
John McDonough.
Okay, and the name of the firm is?
John McDonough.
Spell the last name for the firm?
McDonough.
Okay. Question, the one affordable housing unit that is proposed in this project, can you identify which building that would be and the square footage compared to the other ones?
Ms. Toller, just the testimony at the last hearing was they had not decided between 2 units, which I wrote down as units 4 and 5. They are not the smallest units.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Which I assume is where you're going.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going.
Okay, but
then maybe he can answer my next question.
Well, let me, has that changed in terms of, have they decided?
I don't believe I don't believe there's been a decision, but certainly one of those 2 units.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. My next question is, what is the total square footage of the total project? And what is the cost factor if this was to sell tomorrow, built as is? What is the total profit to be made from a project like this?
So your first question I can answer. Do you mean the total square footage of the buildings?
All 5, yes.
All 5.
Well, 7. It's 7 now, right?
7 units.
7 units.
Correct, right.
Uh-huh.
7 units right here.
17,053 square feet, which is a reduction from the existing 20,000 square feet.
And how much is square footage worth in retail today?
I'm not sure.
You have no idea.
I mean,
Can
there's
you
so many
Google it?
factors that you could take into account. I'm not a realtor.
Just one other question. Well, it's not a question, it's a statement, so if you would please indulge me, the commission,
Keep
because I
it
have
brief,
to go.
please.
Thank you, sure. I just wanted to say that I want to echo with many of the comments being made here tonight by the residents in the 4th Ward regarding 400 Orange Road. While I understand the zoning board's job is to review all applications with principal duties to hear appeals, to grant variances from the strict application of the zoning ordinance and to rule on use applications, I'm not certain why we have zoning laws in place if we're not going to enforce them or keep them, especially if we're trying to stay in the character of the neighborhood. We have zoning laws in place for a reason, correct? The need for anyone to be granted an exception to the rule seems odd, particularly when it happens and continually happens in the Fourth Ward. How many variances have been granted previously in the Fourth Ward already? The Fourth Ward deserves a reprieve from variances. The residents matter. Residents are entitled to open green space, sunshine, clean air, less noise pollution, less density in the neighborhood. I'm just respectfully asking that this board please take into serious consideration every comment made here tonight by these residents, why it was made, and please come to a consensus on the best decision for the Fourth Ward and its residents. Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Patricia Davis. I live in Montclair. I just have a question because we've already heard from a transportation person who's using 3-year-old antiquated data, had not been to the site, is not taking into consideration Amazon trucks, the increase in pedestrian fatalities in our town. I just have a question, Mr. Flynn. Have you actually been to these places to see these buildings that are laid out here?
What do you mean by have I been to
Have you
them?
seen these properties?
Yes.
So you know what they look like. So you know that the only one that actually looks like an apartment building is 364 Orange Road, that the others actually do look like houses. So you knew that, right?
I would disagree.
They look like houses from the outside.
They're all houses. What do you mean by?
Because this is an apartment complex. Where
Correct.
these others that are indicated as apartment and office look like houses.
There's architectural
So-
features that are more similar to a single family, but they're still multifamily.
If you were coming into this town and walked by these places, you would not know that they were multifamily units.
I can't answer that. I would know.
But you said you saw them.
Yes, I did.
So then you know that they look like single-family homes.
I disagree.
I don't know how that could be. I'm a realtor in town, by the way, and it's $350 to $400 a square foot. So I know that these look like single-family homes.
Okay.
Okay? So there's the aesthetics, and the other part of that is, and I have to reiterate what was said about the Fourth Ward, we're pricing out people that have been in this community for a long time. They cannot afford these homes that are going on the market. Their homes are being sold to developers that are coming in and turning them into million-dollar homes.
Okay,
It's not
you
right.
have to ask questions.
I did ask the question, you obviously couldn't answer
Okay.
it, so I just want to say, and by the way, I also noticed the difference in how people are treated when someone can come up and make a statement and they're not interrupted, and then others come up and make a statement and they are interrupted. That's also noted.
Good evening. My name is Mimi Weaver. I live in the First Ward. I was watching this on TV, and my insides turned. They turned when I was listening, and I can no longer stay quiet. They turned when I listened to the traffic man talking and how he totally disrespected the residents of the community.
This is 3 people in a row that are not asking
That's,
questions.
I will come to a question, and I'm sorry, I'm going to keep speaking.
Mr. Turriello,
Because
this is inappropriate.
being
This is the third person in a
disrespectful
row.
to a community that has lived here for generations, and to turn your back, I live, again, in the First Ward. Young man, how can I leave my home that is worth near $2 million now and move into what you want to build and just pay $2,500 a month? Tell me how I can do that. How can my son, who lives on the second floor of a condo here in Montclair, and by the way, on James Street, where they built some townhouses, and the one that was for affordable is a 1-bedroom in the apartment and another bedroom on the outside near the garage, and it's not attached. That was the affordable on the one on James Street. He lives on the second floor. He now needs a 3-bedroom. How can a school teacher move into what you're building here? He is stuck on that,
Okay,
in that
you
condo on
asked the
James
question,
Street.
let him
Yes,
answer.
yes. How can I come and move into what you are building at $2,500 a month, because that's what our taxes are? I would love to move. But tell me how I'm going to do that in less than $2,500 a month. How will my son be able to move to a 3-bedroom on a
Okay,
school
you asked the
teacher's,
question, let
on a
him
school
answer
teacher's
it.
salary? Those are my 2 questions.
One of the units is required to be affordable.
Is-
By requirement, by law, one is required to be affordable.
I understand it's required by law.
Okay, let him finish the answer.
To the rest of your, in regards to the rest of the units, I mean, it's all relative. It's not required to be mandated affordable units. I mean,
Exactly, and you said, and you read from the Montclair plan, that this is for the community, for people, what were the quotes that you read
I think
from the
it's
plan?
conceivable.
For the
I'm
senior
not
citizens
sure
who want to
where the-
move, and for the community? You were looking to build for outsiders to come in and to push the residents who have lived here for generations out. And shame on you. and-
Ms. Weaver, you have to let him answer the question, and
He
it is
said,
not the
what
time.
was the vague, what was your response? What was the word he used?
I don't remember.
I don't either. I do feel that you guys are concerned for our community, but you can't let people roll over the community.
Sir, you mentioned that possibly 4 single-family homes could exist on that site, and did you consider that? Well, may I tell you that I found the 1947 tax record. There were 4 homes on that exact site. 4 single-family homes. Would you like to see it?
If you want it, we can mark it as an exhibit. It'll be 01.
Mr. Chairman, this isn't the time for, this is time for questions.
She is asking him a question about this. She already asked, and he can start answering. Was he aware that there were previously 4 single-family homes on the property?
No.
All right. And you also weren't aware that when Patricia asked you the question about Orange Road, you guys did a drone. I live across the street from 400 Orange Road. You said that you did a drone view, but you didn't go anywhere near the commercial zone, that these apartments are situated on the South End Business District. You stayed right on Ward Place, going into South Orange. This goes into South Orange. Are you aware of that?
West Orange and Orange.
I'm
Let's-
sorry,
let's-
this goes
let's-
into East Orange. Number 2 goes into East Orange.
East Orange touches Montclair at a point.
Yes, but
It's really Orange that borders the town. East Orange touches Montclair at a point at the Orange,
I can
East
answer the
Orange,
question if
Montclair
you want.
border.
You said that 364 Orange Road was offices, 364 Orange Road was apartments. One of them is a senior citizen apartment.
It's
And
not shown on my exhibit. The senior citizen is not shown.
you didn't, that's what I'm saying, you didn't bother to
Well,
show
it's too
anyone.
far.
What do you mean it's too far? You have them listed.
I mean, I had to make a decision as to what the extent of my exhibit was going to be,
But
and
You did not go into the zone where, these are not. 390 is next to me. That is right next to me. I'm at 5 Ward Place.
and it's in the
390
single-family zone.
390 is a single-family home that's been converted into studios. 2 of those apartments are studios, 1 room. One of them is a 1-bedroom, and the other is a converted co-op condo or something that they renovated. You did not do due diligence in your research, sir. And the other one is a very small, tiny 2-bedroom that they've turned,
For this one?
yeah, 390. 390.
390, I looked at
It's next
tax
to me.
records. I can't go inside people's homes, but I can look at tax records, and it said 5 units.
Okay, but it's 5 cut up from a single-family home. Poorly cut up, I will say. 400 and 390 and 382 These are homes. They look like homes. And as Patricia was saying, you look at them, you've got them listed as apartments. The only apartments are the senior citizen apartments way up in the commercial zone, but you did not bother to send your little drone anywhere up that way.
If that's a question as to why I chose to fly my drone where I did, I mean, if the board looks at Exhibit A11, I would have to fly that drone pretty far to get anywhere that's not in the R1 zone. And I'm not going to fly the drone
But you
where
are a
can't even see
planner.
the property.
You are a planner, and you're using our homes.
I'm not going to drone the whole town.
You're using my home, which is across the street, with a drone.
I'm not using your home for anything. I'm using the surrounding neighborhood, and I
But you
took the
didn't go
most-
into the surrounding neighborhood. You stayed in one block. All of these are one block. One block.
Again, I wanted to show the subject site on all of these images so we can see the relationship of the property to its surroundings.
Okay, but I understand, being a thorough planner, you were not terribly thorough to not go back into the tax records, as I did with the Historical Society of Montclair, and see that there were 4 single-family homes on that lot, exactly. 2 of them were subdivided. They were owned by one gentleman. Those homes at 8 Ward Place were built in the 1970s. That 2 lots, as you can see, were owned by the same person, and it was divided. So there were 4 single-family homes on that lot, and it can be done. You just don't want to do it because it's about money. It's not about affordability. And if the master plan is only for the masters, then where are we? And if rules are made to be broken, and you all break your own zoning rules, you break your own bylaws, you break the rules of the order of business, you disrespect us, we're sick of it. You did not do diligence. There were 4 single-family homes, and it can be done. And if they would like to sell the property, I'm sure we can find someone. And to say we are all working-class people, what you're saying, we all po?
Did I say that? I never said anything. The word working class never came out of my mouth.
Oh, yes, somebody said there's working-class people, whoever
It was not me.
It was not us.
It was one of the board members?
I'm not saying that
Well,
either.
I live across the street, and the scale of this building, I live in a ranch. Most seniors, and I'm a senior, don't want stairs. Nobody wants to move with 3 flights of stairs. I fortunately have one of the few ranch homes in this town, and I am going to either be forced to move because this is taller than the trees on my street. You're talking about a building, scale-wise, where I will see nothing but windows and walls, and I gotta look up at it. It will block the sun, the sky, and everything on that corner. I understand you all wanna make money, but can you go somewhere else and make it?
Good evening. My name's Dave Herron, 136 Lincoln Street. I do have a couple of questions. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, my first question is, you keep referring to the master plan. I would caution you to be careful depending on the master plan. The master plan right now, today, is under siege, okay? You quoted from the master plan, and you said something to the effect, the master plan speaks to the needs of what's needed to the community. My question would be, how do you square that statement with the community that's behind you? They're not in support of this. These are the residents, and I look around, they're the residents in the area that you want to build in. How is that conducive to the master plan? Because when you start discussing a master plan, what's needed for the community, that's the community. Okay? Not building it for some other community yet to come here. So that's my first question. How do you square that, knowing you're quoting a master plan that the community is not even in agreement with?
So the master plan that I looked at is from 2023, and I just put that on the record because I think there was some testimony by a member of the public saying that it's several years old. The master plan I looked at was from 2023, so pretty recent considering the fact that townships need to renew their master plan every 10 years. This one's been around for about 1 year. And again, what I spoke about from the master plan, I think speaks to the fact that really we want to encourage a mix of housing types, not just single family, not just detached housing, because not everybody can afford that. Not everybody wants to have to maintain a lawn area. This is a good alternative to single-family living, and it's a different option than what a lot of the township has already.
Okay. That's
right. And just
Nancy.
for the record, the municipal land use law, as part of the statutory criteria, requires me to look at the master plan. We look at the zone plan and we look at the master plan. It's part of our due diligence.
Oh, yes, I'm quite familiar with that. I've been in this community 50 years. I've been leadership and president of NAACP. I understand communities and building and development. One of the things I'm concerned about, and perhaps you could shed a little light on that, I keep hearing the word affordability. In your view, what do you perceive this development project to be in your mind? What's affordable?
So the only time I used the word affordable was to describe the affordable unit, and I was very careful to do so because obviously that carries with it certain legal definitions. I may have, so to answer your question, I would say that living in a multifamily development is typically more conducive to people that might not be able to afford a single-family home.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, but I wish you luck.
You as well.
You know my name, I was here before. They had a meeting at 400 Orange Road about 2 months ago. I was there. They had a couple of realtors there. So I just said, I know a friend of mine looking for a place. I said, how much to go for? $1 million and up. $1 million and up. That cheap?
Again, James Dargan, 391 Orange Road. My question is, how tall is the building, the houses next to it?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, you should need to find out because there's air rights.
Right, but the air rights would be
The air
within
rights would
property
be,
boundaries.
they would be air rights with those buildings right behind it, Ward Place and Pleasant Way.
But the air rights would be confined within your property lines, so it wouldn't take into account what's happening outside of the property lines.
It takes in the height of the building. And the neighbor made mention of the sunlight that's going to be blocked from her building and the air and so forth and whatnot. We just went through in New York with air rights, building next to it, and they had to pay for it.
Well,
So
just,
you need to look into that.
sure, as a
You're
response,
building a building taller than the building next to it.
but within the
That-
zoning requirements.
Whether it's in the zoning requirement or not, If it's taller than the other building, there's a violation.
Mr. Scott?
Good evening. And Mr. Harrison, I'd like to provide a presentation that it's similar to the planner's presentation as he walked through the west side of Orange Road, starting at 340 Orange Road. And I'd like to make that presentation because it speaks to the past history of the housing types on Orange Road for the last 30-plus years. Am I allowed to do that?
No.
Okay.
You can ask him questions about it and ask
Okay.
whether he knows any of that, but you'll get an opportunity when they're done to present that.
Okay, then I can ask them a couple of questions then. And this can go to the planner. Starting with 340 Orange Road, which was built back in the year 2000. That was an R1 zone. Do you know how many houses, how many one-family houses was on that property when the senior citizen building was built?
No.
There were 2 one-family houses because it was an R1 zone, okay? In regards to 354 Orange Road, which was built back in 2012, do you know how many, well, let me just add to the fact that 99 units were built on that property, which originally housed 2 two-family houses. That's 340 Orange Road, okay? So you answered the question you didn't know, but I'm trying to give you a little information there. Do you know how many houses were on 354 Orange Road prior to them building 12 units or 2 six-family apartments?
No.
There were 2 two-family houses. Do you know how many houses?
Excuse me, could you go back? I'm trying to take notes. There's 12 units on what Orange Road?
354.
I think he's on
354?
354.
And the one prior to that, there's how many units? 99, you said?
Yes.
What number Orange Road?
That was 340 Orange Road.
Thank you.
Okay. In regards to 360 Orange Road, which currently has 4 units, it's a townhouse. Do you know how many units was on that property, which was built back in 2022?
Which address?
360 Orange Road.
No, I do not.
Okay, that was a vacant lot. Do you know how many units are currently in 364 Orange Road, which is an apartment complex?
Currently, you mean?
Yes.
I believe I do. Based on tax records, 38 units currently.
That's correct, and that was built in 1950. Are you aware of how many one-family houses were built in the Hitchcock complex back in 1958?
May I ask where the Hitchcock complex is?
It's on the west side of Orange Road.
It's down Hitchcock Place?
Well, Hitchcock Place and all, and that is the name of the
it
street.
is. Oh, okay.
And some of those houses are on Orange Road as well.
Right.
Okay. Do you know how many were built?
I do not. I could count the lots, but I don't
Okay.
know.
There were 21 plus one-family houses because it was an R1 zone, okay? In regards to, and my point being, those changes to 340 Orange Road, 354 Orange Road, and 360 Orange Road was based on approvals to some extent from the Board of Adjustments, okay, allowing that higher density in an R1 zone, okay? And as we build this additional density, obviously it's affecting the community, okay? And now we, as citizens and neighbors and residents, we have accepted 340 Orange Road because that was a senior citizen complex. We accept the fact that we needed 354 Orange Road because that was a supportive housing complex for people with special needs or disabilities, okay? But once we move to 360 Orange Road, now we're building expensive units. There's 4 units there, they're 2-bedroom units. The average price on those new units that just went on the market is over $4,000 for 2 bedrooms. Okay, now we're moving into creating gentrification and the lack of affordability. Okay, as we move to 400 Orange Road, now basically we talked about the value of the individual units. Those units most likely will be in the price range, not the affordable unit, but the market rate units absolutely will be $800 to $900 and possibly $1 million each, even though they're townhouses because of the sizes of the unit being 24 to 2,600 square feet. These are not starter homes. Absolutely not starter homes. So they will not meet the needs of seniors in Montclair who want to downsize. I'm a senior. I've lived in the area for 74 years. If I wanted to downsize, I would not be able to move into that unit. I possibly could move into that unit since you have my property at 382, sell everything I have and move in, but that's not my game plan. My plan is to provide affordable housing, which I am a realtor. I have third-generation family
Mr.
in my
Scott,
units.
question.
So my point being, as we move into these new developments that are aiding and abetting the gentrification in Montclair, the 4th Ward has taken a tremendous hit in that gentrification. And one of the members mentioned that maybe taking one of the units and dividing it and making a 2-family house. There's recently a 2-family house on Mission Street that was remodeled. Do you know how much that house is under contract for right now?
I do not.
$1.1 million. $1.1 million. So the average rental price is going to be $5,000 to $6,000 a month. So we are experiencing extreme gentrification in the 4th Ward. And as far as the master plan is concerned, the master plan has not addressed the fact that 75 to 80% of the affordable housing, supportive housing, veterans housing is in the 4th Ward. So when they talk about this town is built out, we are supporting in the 4th Ward the majority of the affordable housing in this township. And if we can do that in 1 ward, and the other 2 wards specifically, 1st and 2nd Ward, has 1% of the affordable housing, this town is not built out. We have to take a serious look at the master plan. So when you say we could have gone somewhere else to do this, you could have gone somewhere else in the township and looked to build this property, this project, but you didn't take the time and the due diligence to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Young, I have a question. I have a question of Mr. Young.
Mr. Scott.
Mr. Scott, I'm sorry. You're young because you said you're 74, and I
Okay,
can't believe
okay,
it.
I'll take that.
You had said that there is an overabundance of affordable units in the 4th Ward.
Yes.
Okay. And I take that as your word, as a resident of the 4th Ward.
Yes.
But yet you would rather this developer build affordable units in the 4th Ward.
No, that's
Is that-
not.
I just want
that's-
to make sure that
okay.
I'm getting your point.
What I'm saying, and I think you missed the point, with the fact that you would be bringing this size of a development with this potential cost, it will have an impact on the property value because the lot right across the street on the corner of Orange Road and War Place is just as large as this project. That owner is looking at selling that property now for $1 million plus, knocking that unit down, and he could put up 10 to 20 units, possibly another townhouse configuration, and be looking for prices $800,000 to $900,000 per unit. That absolutely brings gentrification into the community. So I'm not willing to accept one affordable housing at the expense of our community and at the expense of the neighbors, because Ms. Hubert, she would be looking at tall buildings on both sides of her property. Why should one resident, not one single resident, should have to experience that at the greed of a developer?
So it has nothing really to do with the affordable units per se?
When you're, no, because we,
Okay, all right.
because
I understand.
knowing the community.
I understand.
Knowing the community, what's going on in New Street, Mission Street, Hartley Street, Maple Avenue, Walnut Street, there's been a change on two-family houses, and those two-family houses have been going for $1 million plus. And the people that used to live there, 2-3 generations that were paying maybe $1,000, $1,500, those units are going to $5,000 to $6,000. This project just fits right into that strategy.
I was confused as to, but I got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the audience with questions for this witness?
Chantal Bolivar, 17 Ward Place. I would like to refer to the fact that you feel that the 7 units, the buildings, is going to be beneficial to the resident. What do you base that on? Like, who wants to live places where there is buildings rather than a place where there is a house with a nice yard? Like, where did you get that feeling from? Which study said that?
It was based on an analysis of the property itself and its relationship with the surroundings, as well as the compatibility of what we're proposing with what we see along Orange, like one of the residents mentioned.
No,
Orange
but-
is lined with multifamily. There is some commercial here. There's the cemetery across the street. We try to find what's most appropriate for this particular property. If we were trying to cram in 7 units on a 5,000 square foot lot, a 10,000 square foot lot, it would be a totally different conversation. It's simply
But there is
based
a
on
there
our
is a
lot.
zoning there, right? And I feel like it's for a reason. Like, this block doesn't have any buildings. Like, you went out and look at other places, but you have to understand that the residents actually love that about this block, and it's actually, even if it's rare, it's something that the people would like to keep. We would like to have a place where it's affordable, where we can have single homes. We don't have to always be in an urban type of place. We like, the residents like this block because it's residential. So I feel that your argument is not right.
Right. I mean, we're not proposing this that in a location that would be surrounded on all sides by single family. This is sort of an end cap at the end of this block along Orange Road, which obviously does have those other uses along it. I would say that this is an appropriate location for the units that we're proposing.
So, but why don't you guys are thinking about for single-family home, like the zoning is,
With 4
is
single
right
families,
now?
I can't guarantee that an affordable unit would even be required. That would again require 4 separate driveways, whereas we're only proposing 1. That's more interactions between.
I'm talking
pedestrian
compared
and
to the
vehicle.
to the residents, to us, like,
Right.
to the rest of
We're
the
talking about the
residents.
difference between 4 units and 7 units.
Yeah, and a building and a house is totally different. The house that you listed, 390 Orange Road, it looked like a house on a big lot, and it doesn't change the overall look of our neighborhood, but buildings will.
Well, there will be substantial landscaping, whereas 390 Orange Road does not have that benefit. We are going to be proposing street trees all along Orange Road. We have landscaping throughout. We're going to be increasing open space on the property. And again, we have to look at what's out there today that can legally remain. This existing vacant building, there's no one forcing the developer to get rid of that. That's the developer's free will to replace that with the more conforming residential use.
Okay, so I just want to address also, if I can make a statement. Is that okay? It's going to be a short one, just to reinforce.
Very, very
Yeah,
short.
to reinforce what you heard from all the residents that lived in that area. We don't want a building or buildings because we think that is going to change a lot of things and not for the best for us. Thank you.
Any other members of the public with questions? Before Mr. Scott comes up, is there anyone else who has questions for this witness? Okay, Mr. Scott.
This is a question for the planner. Are you aware of the one-family house that was built on High Street, which is off of Cedar Avenue, about a year ago?
I'm not.
It was a one-family house. It came about through a subdivision. I believe that house was 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. It had at least five bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. As I mentioned, it was at 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, and it sold for like $1.6 million. This property at 400 Orange Road could accommodate 2 one-family houses and be in compliance in the R1 zone. That's a question for you.
From a use standpoint, that's correct. Conceivably, I would have to see it and make sure that the dimensions obviously would, the width and the depth and everything, the way that it would be subdivided. But from a use standpoint, yes.
And then with that being the case, it would fall right in line with the character of the neighborhood.
I mean, I would say that it would not be compatible with what we see happening on Orange, especially on properties that are this large. Properties that are this large along Orange are typically not single-family, based on my analysis.
But with the availability of this particular lot, which is larger than the average houses on Orange Road, it could be built and comply with the R1 zone and still provide the character and the look of the neighborhood.
Well, the reason that the zoning board exists, the main function of the zoning board is to find pieces of properties like this that might not be conducive to the requirements of the zoning code, simply because the zoning code is a one-size-fits-all requirement where you can't possibly conceive of every single property in that zone. There are certain situations that might warrant variances, which are what we're asking for.
My last question. This is a softball one. Okay. If you were to bring an application to the Board of Adjustments with no variances, just like an earlier application that came in to expand the size of a home, I don't want to speak for the Board of Adjustments, but I think that their deliberation after, this is your 4th meeting here, sir?
I think so, yes.
Okay, and soon to be a couple more.
Hopefully one more.
And as I mentioned, not to speak for the Board of Adjustments, but if you're going to bring something to not only the Board of Adjustments, but to the community as well, we're looking for something that's conducive and fits the character of the neighborhood and does not impact the character of our neighborhood. And we should be given the same respect that every single resident and every single ward in this town receives. And we are concerned that this application does not provide that. Thank you.
Any other members of the public with questions for this witness? Debating on the sequence.
How much are these units
Say your
going?
name again? I'm sorry, just for the record.
Oh, Kimberly. How much are these units going for?
I don't know.
How much is the affordable one going for?
$1 million and up.
I don't know.
I'm told $1 million.
Okay,
Okay.
you answered my question.
The ordinance sets the income limits for the affordable unit. You know,
What about the ones that's not affordable?
the ordinance does not set that. That's one of the issues we're dealing with.
Hmm. And it's only one? You trying to make 7 or 8?
Oh, okay.
7 units total, 6 will be market rate, 1 will be affordable.
And the developer will have to make a contribution as well to the Affordable Housing Fund because it's not divisible by 5. Basically, your ordinance is 5 units, 5 units, 5 units. If it's not divisible by 5, you have to make a contribution for the fraction.
Okay, can I ask this last question? How is it that us as parents is supposed to keep our kids in Montclair, where it's beautiful. We love greenery. I'm a Montclair native to a certain extent, but I went to Montclair High School. My kids went to Montclair High School. My husband went to Montclair High School. His family went to Montclair High School. We're all Montclair natives, and I know maybe some of the board has been to Montclair High School. How is it that our kids are supposed to buy something that they lived in for all their life if they want to, but they can't afford it? Because we have developers coming in and they're buying up stuff and they're kicking us out that's been here forever. I don't understand how you feel so comfortable in your spot to develop all these big buildings, high rises, we're gonna say high rises, and it's okay. How do you feel if you, in your neighborhood, I don't know where are you from, sir?
Middlesex County.
Okay. How do you feel as though that's affordable for your kids, if you have any kids? I don't know if you have kids.
Middlesex County or Montclair?
Middlesex.
I think there's affordable options.
Do you think it's affordable here in Montclair? Do you think that you would be able to raise your kids in Montclair at the prices that you guys have these houses going for? Or condos?
Again, I'm
excuse me.
not a realtor, and I haven't been in the market in Montclair, so I can't really speak to the housing values.
But we're talking about this now. The housing, the condos that you're trying to build now, do you feel as though if you were to move here in Montclair, do you feel as though that you could raise your kids here and teach them how to buy property, or do you feel as though that they could buy property here in Montclair?
I mean, to get to the root of your question, I think, I mean, even if, like one resident said, if we subdivided this into 4 single families, you're not solving the issue of affordability by doing that. You're talking about the going rate in Montclair. There's nothing this developer can do other than provide for
But we're talking,
Anybody could have bought the lot.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to ask you a question. Why, and I'm not trying to be funny. Why did you not buy the lot?
I can't afford it.
Well, do you know what the developer paid for the lot?
It doesn't matter. The point of the point that I'm trying to make is you guys are kicking us out. That's been here.
If someone in the audience bought the lot, because the lot.
You didn't come around to our neighborhood, Pleasant and Ward. No one came to us to say, hey, we have property. Would you like to buy? Before a developer. You never said, and no one came to us that lives in this neighborhood.
This developer didn't run the developer bought the property on the market. And just like anybody here could have done that.
And he's
But
about
the point
to
is,
have
then
money.
you could have kept it affordable. You could have done whatever you
How?
wanted. If you
Okay,
bought the lot,
Mr. Macero,
I'm having a dialogue.
How?
I'm not arguing.
she's asking
Right,
questions
how?
at this
You could have bought the lot and not
Mr.
built on it.
Macero,
Yes. I'm sorry, am I not allowed to converse?
she was up here pretty much asking questions.
Right.
And I was asking her a question. Okay.
And
I'll stop.
that's not that, when she gets up and
I'll stop.
testifies, you can ask her
Okay, I'm sorry.
questions.
So could you answer my question? No.
What was the question?
I think the answer to your question, honestly, is if you were to subdivide this and get multiple single families or even one single family, let's take one single family, for instance. Now you have one single family building on a 24,000 square foot lot. That's not going to be any more affordable than what we're proposing. If you subdivide it into 2, 3, 4 single families, you still have potentially large buildings, potentially large private yards. You're still not solving the affordability issue that way either. So the
It's
simple
the
fact that
price.
the developer is proposing 7 units is not the cause of the issue. And it's not making it any worse either.
It's making it worse.
Okay. Do you have another question?
try and lessen it. Let's not do 7. Can we go to 4? Can we even go to, we can even maybe push it to 5. Maybe. But
Again,
that's
if we go
pushing
to
it over the
5,
edge.
Are we talking about larger units?
No.
Conceivably.
No.
Still going to be the same.
No.
Okay.
And not only that, but it's not going to be affordable. You're talking about one person affording. I asked the
Even if it was
question.
5
I
units.
asked the question. Excuse me. I asked the question. How much? Nobody has an answer. Nobody has that on the table. What is affordable to you?
Why would a 5-unit development be any more affordable than the 7-unit development?
What is affordable to you?
To me personally, what can I afford? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Don't
Can you
wanna
afford
answer
$1 million home?
that. I'm not going to answer that. It's
Okay.
irrelevant. How is that relevant
Okay.
to this conversation?
The ordinance sets what the affordable unit can be sold for. And it's
But
not in his control, it's the ordinance, it's not in our control. That's one of the givens here. Okay. Anyone else with
But
questions?
it's not affordable. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's not affordable.
It's, okay, let me do this. The affordable is based on, it's based on median income, and then it's either 50% or 30% of median income. It's set by ordinance, it's set by state law. It's, in the real world, it'll be affordable. The other units are a different issue. Any other one with?
What is affordable?
No.
For us.
No, I'm going to get to that point because I want to direct comments to the applicant on the issue that is before us. Okay. Anyone else with questions for this witness? Okay. Now, I would run if I were you, and I would yell at Mr. McDonough if I were you. When is your engineer available?
He'll be available at the next time that you can accommodate us.
Okay, and that is a problem. How badly are we booked for our, literally our remaining meetings this year?
Our September 18th meeting at this point has 2 confirmed applications. 2 of them look like they're dropping off, so if this could be the 3rd application for September 18th. October has also 3 at the moment, but some of those canceled ones from September 18th might be going there. November and December are empty at this point.
Okay. Who are the 2 applications that remain for 2 weeks?
For the September 18th, it's 61 Mission Street and 204 Claremont Avenue.
Okay, 61 Mission has the same issues as this.
Yeah.
Okay, I assume you want to be on as soon as possible.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. The residents, what is your thought? And let me do our problem so you understand why we heard the other application first tonight. As you saw, it took 15 minutes, overdone. We have a lot of applications like that pending that we're trying to fit in because we have a lot of lengthy applications, will be my nice word, that we are required by law to hear within a certain time period. And I do not think those folks should be prejudiced to get their simple house edition, whatever, heard by the board. And if I were them, I'd refuse to waive our time limits to act on the application, because why should we wait? Because you have these big controversial applications. That's why we try and fit them in. The one application for the 18th, we've carried twice now, correct?
Yes.
It is literally across the street. It should not take long, but one does not ever know. Mission Street has the same issues, and there will not be as many people here, but I suspect there will be some, and it is the exact same issues as Mr. Scott was pointing out in terms of, do you have preferences as to when we hear this? Okay. Okay, let me do, how does September 18th work for you, knowing we have to hear the other two applications first?
I feel like because it's so long and we've been here over and over, and you know, a lot of us, of course, like all of us have like life and everything. So a date where we could be first to be heard would be great, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know
So
what other people feels like, but
we just have the 1 October meeting, or there?
Yeah, just one meeting in October on the 16th, and then November 6th, December 4th, and December 18th are the remaining meetings for the year.
I think October might be a better date.
Okay.
And October also-
October, we have an application we carried on
Five-wheeler.
Wheeler Street, which will not be short. And the exact same issues, we already raised those issues. You do not want to, you know, the date that is free is November 6th.
November 6th is at this point completely free, yes.
Mr. Chairman, just respectfully, why would Wheeler have priority over us? Has that been started?
Yes, it has been
Okay, all
started.
right, okay.
It's
So
been
they're in the
started.
same-
We had.
Okay, okay.
Imagine this application, exact same
Okay.
thing, fewer people, but exact same application.
Okay. I mean, if that's the best the board can do, I would like to finish. to
I
plan
mean,
on fit-
I think since we have others that we're obligated to,
Okay.
and I don't think you want to add your audience to their audience, and,
Okay.
you know, because I think there will be.
Okay, so it's November,
November 6th.
okay. And we'll be first on the agenda.
You'll be the
Right.
first and
Okay.
only application on the agenda.
Okay.
The goal is to finish that evening. So if there are any members of the public who can't come that day after Election Day, you'll all be tired. But, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm an attorney, and we did have opposition.
Sorry, could you please come to the podium?
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, I am an attorney. We did have opposition, which we had hopefully thought we would be able to present this evening, but understandably, they haven't finished, so we can't present that opposition. But the November 6th meeting, if we can be assured that they will have finished their application, and then we can present our opposition.
Okay.
Then we can do the November 6th
Okay.
meeting.
Could counsel identify himself? and
Clarence
please-
Balknight.
I'm sorry, sir?
Clarence Balknight.
And who does Mr. Forknight represent, please?
Miss Janet Hubert.
Ms. Hubert spoke this evening, is that correct?
She answered, she made some questions, but she did not testify.
Mr. Chairman, I had specifically asked that that not happen, and just for the record, counsel was here, counsel heard her ask a question, counsel represents her, and I'd just like to preserve that for the record.
At future hearings, only if you call her to testify can she come up.
Understood.
Okay. What was I going to say? Okay. The only thing, and I think it is in everyone's interest we finish that evening. I think a lot of that will depend upon the questions from members of the public, how long that takes. One point on that, and particularly now that you have time, I want a memo, however this occurs, I want a memo from the board engineer that is as clean as possible, that I don't, if there are issues, I'd like it to be a finite number that we can address, and otherwise, the board engineer says, good, 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 good.
I understand.
I don't want to spend a lot of time debating between the board engineer and your engineer as to, trying to think how to do this. The issue, there are a number of bulk variances that are required that are triggered by the size of the units. The size of the units is one of the issues that is compounding the sense of the neighbors that this is not fitting in with their neighborhood. And I think, and we've had the same testimony on the other applications in terms of what the master plan says, but it's missing the underlying point of this is a very special town, and what is happening, and a lot of this is nothing to do with this application. I know what's happening on my block and what houses get sold for on my block. When I moved on into the block, there were 3 firemen living on the block. Firemen could not buy a house on the block anymore, anywhere close to it. And this is not a good thing. But this board can't, fix the bigger issue of a lot of rich folks are trying to move to town. But I'm dealing with it in the context of this application, the size of the units and the whole approach is hard for me to reconcile with the finding that it's not resulting in a substantial detriment to the public good. I mean, that's the context we're doing it. We're, a lot of the things, and no offense to the residents, are, not really our issues, but it is, there's the dilemma in the zone plan. It is zoned single family. The property is currently not residential, and how you square that. And I'm not voicing where I'm coming from on how best to deal with it, but it is a sense of is this what we want the town to look like, is how I'm going to do it. And these plans are an infinite improvement over what was originally proposed that looked like it came down from outer space and had no relationship to the community. But it is a question of justifying in terms of the negative criteria of this. It is really a regularly shaped parcel. It's not like it's a triangle or weird angles. And justifying a bunch of bulk variances, which, as I said, really come from the size of the units is, I'm struggling with how I get there. And the other part of it, which as I asked the question of your planner, is one of the rationalizations for doing multifamily is really the wrong word for this, but attached housing is probably a better way to describe this, is getting additional open space. And you don't have that here. It's just plain and simple, and then that ties in again to the size of the units. I know Mr. Griffith had a thought on, don't come back with 8 units. That's you're going to make some very irate people here if you suddenly shrank units but came back with 8 of them. I'm obviously saying I think smaller units would be better, but I think go back, look, and there may be better configurations of this. There are, and I'm going to throw one other thing out that no one, not editorial. There are issues with the school bus stop, crossing Orange Road. There are not crosswalks. Some of this is not totally within your control, but doing things with saying, gee, it would be good if the board recommended certain improvements, that you suggest as to what can be done. If I had a kid who lived on these streets, I would be nervous every day about getting on to and from the school bus. It's, and the size of the units, there probably will be some school kids. How many, who knows, but there's certainly bedrooms for them, and I think there are existing conditions. I do think that a little attention to the coming out of Pleasant Way and whether you do have good sight distances is something that should have been looked at. I understand, and I do bigger applications. In one sense, there's not a lot of traffic, in the normal traffic sense of doing that. But that does not make it a safe intersection, and maybe it is. I was very cautious when I drove out. I've been a couple times to the property, well, several times with its long history here, but was very cautious before I made the left to go back into Montclair. I think you have been given, the objectors have given you hints on some of where they're coming from, and you might want to be proactive.
Mr. Chairman, if we are indeed proactive, and I hear what the chairman is, what the chairman's concerns are, I think it's in everybody's interest to have this finished as soon as possible, whichever way the board goes. Would the board consider a bifurcated application, bifurcated in somewhat of an unusual manner, because we have put on our testimony with regard to most of the issues that will still apply. If there is a redesign or an agreement to redesign by, let's just suppose, reducing units to 2,000 square feet from 2,400 and being able to move that one corner of the road because of the reduction. Without having formal architectural drawings of each of the units, would that be something that the board would consider so that we don't spend all kinds of time and money? We'd have to re-engineer, et cetera. The engineering would stay consistent. I think we can get the engineering done, but
Let me, I think that's a function of what you're doing with the third story.
with the bulks, right, yes.
Because that's
Design.
clearly been voiced as a concern,
Right.
both by board members and members of the
Right.
public. And if you're keeping the third story, I think then we need to
see
see
it.
architectural
Sure.
drawings or say they're exactly the same.
Okay.
You know, that's, I don't think, I'm not approving a variance for the number of stories without seeing what it looks
Of course.
like. I'd be very
I mean,
blunt
I'm not an
about that.
architect, but I am imagining that most of the square footage will come off of the third story. I'm just guessing, I don't know.
Well,
you know.
okay, I'm not going to design your project.
Okay, but would the board consider then approval of the use and
Well,
then?
you're entitled to do that.
Right.
I think, you know, you have to weigh, that means you're coming back a second time, and.
Well, at least we know.
You know, I think given, I don't know. I will leave, that is your choice. If you come in that way, we don't have a choice about doing it. I understand the reasons you would do it, so I'm.
Okay.
So, but, you know, I think there are some of the engineering comments that are site-specific, but there are some that I will call generic would apply regardless as to, you know, checking the sewer mains, existing sewer mains, that type of stuff, you're going to have to connect, period, and so I'll leave it to the engineers
Okay.
to figure out what, but even if you're coming in bifurcated, I still think most of those issues can be addressed, and there just may be some site-specific where, you know, a
Right.
stormwater
Okay.
control device is going on the site. Any board members with any further comments or thoughts? Okay, so this application is being continued and, no,
If I may, if I may, along the lines of the reduction of square footage, a different approach might be the maximum building coverage of 25%, and it's 28.8. That might be a different tactic to take, and may give you more flexibility. Is just my personal thing. I think it would be nicer to have more variation in size of the units that are on the site. Everybody has the same size unit right now, like everybody, you know. I think it would be in the better interest of the community to have more of a mix, if you will.
Okay.
Any way you do it, I think you have a very good architect. He's shown great skills. He's made changes. He listens well. You have great opportunity.
yeah, and I think, you know, and that would be, you know, there is considerable variation in the sizes of the houses in the area. It's not an all cookie-cutter approach, which is one of the nice things about town. Yeah, and just to follow, you know, that was my comment on the open space, we laid the impervious cover that, you know, make it more, making it look more like a single-family area even, and you might actually accomplish that better by putting more units together and having a real yard. But
Which would trigger a variance.
you're having, no, not a yard in the sense of.
No, if the more units together, right?
Yeah, well, yeah,
right.
but
Okay.
I don't know that that's a different, in one sense, it's a different variance.
Right,
but
okay.
It's, okay.
Okay.
This application is being continued until November 6th. vote early and often the day before. Skip the often part. And we'll see you on November 6th. There'll be no further notice. And for the audience, please try and follow the rules. It will get everyone home sooner. You can make your points, and we value your input, but it's better if we don't speak out of turn. Is that, ask questions when it's turn, and you will have your chance next time to say whatever you want as to whether you like, dislike, or whatever the development. But I would also encourage the neighbors to sit down and discuss what you would really want to see on the property. Okay. Not now. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nice to meet everyone.